everybody, welcome back to BUAL. My name's Ebak. I'm joined today by Golly Molly. Who have we got lined up for us today?
Well, we're going to be starting off with an Imperial of Mandem versus Average Players Only. Two teams kind of towards the middle of the bracket, and they'll both be looking for those wins to secure the spots in the upper bracket playoffs, which is going to be interesting to see what they bring to the table today. That is a very comfortable position. You never want to be stuck in the lower bracket for a playoffs run.
Nope, they want to try and qualify in the highest positions possible. We're on the penultimate Playday at the moment, so we have 6th place of Imperium Mandem up against 4th place in Average Players Only. Very, very close. This season has been so tight. Obviously, we were talking about this before, Golu. I think one of the most important factors to keep in mind is that average players, despite both teams having up and down performances throughout the season, they're 2 points apart, and two of their wins so far this season have been gifted to them with forfeits. That's not necessarily showing great form throughout this season.
Yeah, they've had some rough patches, and it's always strange when you come into a game with Average Players Only. It's so hard to predict how they're going to play, because sometimes in their game, for example, against it was Team Alpha, their opening game of the season, they played so well, taking it to a deep overtime match. And then other times, they're looking against Aces, a team who's supposed to be pretty close to Alpha, at least in the standings. They just couldn't find any rounds whatsoever. They just seem to fall apart completely as a team. Are we going to get the kind of game where they are pushing really hard for those overtime rounds, or are they going to be falling apart a little bit? Again, you just never know. And their wins have also been all over the place. There is literally no form of consistency with this roster.
It's the chaos of BUAL a lot of the time, and a lot of that's down to the players themselves individually. I've casted a lot of these guys. We were just saying, when was the last time we casted together, Golu? It was over in Reflex Championship, where we casted a lot of these Imperium of Mandem players. So we know Scipio pretty well. We know a lot of these guys, and they've had an up and down season. For those who aren't too familiar, previous season Imperium Mandem, they absolutely dominated during the league season. I was very impressed with their performances, finishing in a very high spot all the way to the final. Didn't quite make it. They want to set the record straight this time around with the new boys on the scene, Average Players Only, trying to impress, and I think they've done a decent job of that so far.
Yeah, I think some of the individuals coming forward in this, you're looking at players who haven't really played a ton of Buell, who are even new to Buell this season, have done a really good job of stepping up and making names for themselves in some of these key matches where they really need to have powerful performances from individuals to kind of help carry their records across. It's almost a little bit of a shame that they can't do that together.
Bit unfortunate, but we'll have to wait and see. Thankfully, nobody's getting eliminated, one thing, during this season, because that one team bye that's at the bottom of the league. So everybody gets a second chance, which is always quite nice. And as you've seen, possibly if you'd not just joined us, you could see on that screen before, quite a few forfeits today to various teams. So unfortunately, Ranked Monkeys getting no points. They're sitting there on that lowly 1. But who knows? I think with the quality that we've got in this division, they could still even get quite far from that lower bracket position.
Yeah, it would just have to depend on how they're getting set themselves forward. But I believe we are ready to find the stats of our teams here and just kind of see how their seasons have gone so far for the players as a whole across the board. And you're looking at a fairly decent spread of stats across the board. You've got the top, Scipio there on a 1.52 rating is a little bit above everyone else. That's a pretty high 2.13 KD. I think he's going to be a player that you really want to try and pin down from this Imperium of Mandem rosters. He's got some scary performance in him.
There's a lot of good stats here for the gang. Something that is quite common across BUAL in general is these games, as you just alluded to, where individual players can just win a game for you. We've seen Scipio do that, we've seen Angelo do it in the past. This is the first time I've seen Average Players in action myself, but I've heard quite a lot about these guys, especially just looking at these stats, the likes of Nerf and Jaffa as well. With those high KDs, will certainly help out in the big clutch moments, of which there are always so many.
Yeah, this is like a team where, like we were talking before, they have so many players that can step up to the plate. They just never seem to do so on the same Playday. When you throw back to a couple of days, it was Playday 4 in their game against Delta Badhand. They win 7-4, but 4 of those rounds are 2v4s, 2v5s. It's like obviously a clutch is on the onus of your opponent. But,
Yes.
to have the individuals who can capitalize on that mistake, it's a give and take in those situations, and to have the quality to take them is obviously brilliant.
It is, and sometimes that's what you need. It makes the difference, especially given that all these teams will be in the bracket, moving on, upper or lower. Those games, you just win by a fluke, and there you go. You're all the way through. It's not like a league season where you're trying to rack up those points consistently. So hopefully they've got that going for them. I've heard my mic's terrible. I'm going to try and sort that. Golu, talk about something else.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where our teams choose to take their battle today. We found a lot of Oregon from both of these teams. Just standard maps, very comfortable. They're going to be able to know what they're doing. And whether that changes up, whether we see either a more aggressive map, which will lean into some of these individual players who can really take fights to them. You're looking at your chalets, you're looking at your coastlines. I mean, to a certain extent, we're seeing something like Cafe starting to become a little bit more frag intensive, where people are starting to just take more aggressive peeks, try and take some angles. But I think that still falls under those maps where they're going to be falling back a little bit. And speaking of the map pool, I think we might be ready to see where we're going to be taking our battle to today. Well, Chalet and Oregon both gone, so they're the auto bans out. So never mind, forget what I was saying. We're not going to see either of those two, which is quite a nice change up.
Sure, and next up we've got the actual bans themselves that the teams have been picking, starting out with the Coastline, followed by a Villa. Obviously, you're speaking about the play style of breaking down some of the more set meta sort of maps, even with Cafe, breaking down Pixel Spot nice and early, taking those risks can immediately impact the round, change the amount of time you spend in the early round. It leaves such a big gap for those big clutch moments. So kind of self-fulfilling prophecy with these sort of strategies. And those maps maybe that you'd expect now that we've got Bank and Cafe out. We're going to Clubhouse, where I think that applies even more than anywhere else. Yeah,
everyone should be knowing exactly what they need to do on Clubhouse. I'm expecting a very clean game, and maybe that's a little bit too much pressure to put in a map which is starting to be a little bit more important for, especially IOM in that lower bracket, where they need to keep things tight. But, I mean, you have to know what you're doing on Clubhouse by this point. Every site is well known. Even the ranked players know how it's being done at this point. So there's going to be no excuses for sloppiness. I mean, I really hope we're not seeing any mistakes. You're looking at your classic sites like the basement. It's going to be very important for these teams to be putting together. Cash, you do not want to be losing that cash site. But Cash, Clubhouse is changing. Attacks can really start to look very lethal now that it's kind of been solved a little bit.
To some degree. You spoke about mistakes being made, and there's one key one for one of our teams today. I don't know if you're reading my mind and know what I'm thinking right now, Kalu. It might be one specific player.
Yeah. Well, if this is in reference to the fact that we are graced by the presence of Peak in this lobby, then yeah, we might be on the same page with this one. It should be fun to see. Always nice to see the team getting involved with things, taking the league into their own hands. Maybe a little bit of match fixing. You never know, but we'll try to keep that to a minimum.
No, not happening.
Yeah, you don't want to let the admins win. Just to they might ban you if you don't. Sort of thing.
I believe there was a player missing for average players only. If I'm not mistaken, it was average players only. And Peak, the league manager, I don't know what the exact title is for Peak, but you know who Peak is probably if you're involved in BUAL anyway. And if you don't, you'll see him in action regardless, jumping into this lineup trying to help out as best he can. I don't know. I've not played with him before, so I don't know if he can keep up to this level of these players, or whether maybe he'll be one of those stars winning incredible clutches.
It's going to be the Peakalicious show. I'm calling it now.
No.
Every single round is going to dominate the field. Just spitballing around. Yeah, he's going to have all the information. He's going to know everything. He's big braining this one. He's going to be running around the map with Ash, just slaughtering everyone. There's nothing you can do. And there's going to be the rest of the team following up. You're going to see the Dokubi, the Lions, just giving him all the intel that they possibly could demand. Potentially.
I mean, we've been very much alluding to the fact that the strategies set by these teams are loose. They change throughout constantly. They don't seem to have as much focus on these regimented, this is what we've got to do, this is the checklist. They're enjoying themselves. They're flexing about with their strategic play. And I think that actually suits a style of throwing somebody you're not too familiar with in there. That's a lot better. I'd be a lot more concerned if the playstyles were like that. But thankfully, for average players only, that 2-point gap that they've got to maintain, I think they could at the very least pull out overtime, and try and get a 2-1 split.
I mean, yeah, a less regimented style has always benefited teams with subs. I mean, I think the iconic one that I will always look back to as a sub in the highest tiers of players, that lovely Fnatic EG match at Milan, I believe it was, where we had the super coach come in, Dizzle with the shotguns there. But I mean, it doesn't always work out when you have a sub, and it does remove some of that team cohesion, which is really helpful when you're trying to set yourself up for an execute, especially on the attacker side of things. So I think Clubhouse is a map where you want to be as coordinated as possible when coming in for these plant attempts as the attackers. You want to open up as many of these possible angles as possible. You're looking at a cash take. You need that garage control, and a lot of the time the best way to do that is by having good coordination with potential frag grenades, potential utility to clear out that rafter player. But the most important thing is just pushing numbers at different angles to catch that gunner on rafters out. And that can be kind of seen all across the map, but jumping into the bans, it's the Thatcher followed by the Jackal.
Well, that's a counter to our very open style of play. The Jackal, no cheeky roamers lingering around, will feel particularly safe. Of course, many other operators able to do similar jobs, of course, with everybody having drones available. But that little bit of a hand afforded to the defenders now, and Thunderbird has been taken away from them on top of that. Not a ban you generally see. Might that be to affect some of these power positions you're speaking about?
Well, I think what we've seen a lot of the Thunderbird play when it has been brought in Buell is it's been allowing this very aggressive play from the defenders where they'll take gunfights and they'll be looking for early picks. And if it should go awry or if they take a lot of damage in that exchange, you fall back to site, you have the Thunderbird Kona stations to heal you back on up, and you're ready to start aggressing again, especially with how quickly they recharge. If you have that Thunderbird actively picking them up and replacing them, it goes from a 30-second cooldown to a 6. So these kind of... I still think that's ridiculous that works out, but I mean, that's kind of the idea with abusing it. As we're seeing, though, the interesting pick here is the Montaigne.
Yeah, we'll have to see if they stick that out, obviously, during the 6-pick phase. Doesn't look like they're going to, unfortunately. But I think more interestingly, on the opposite side, the Valkyrie switching for the Maestro, obviously scaring your opposition with a bit of extra intel that you might have, a little bit more site-related. This entire defensive lineup, and the attacking one on top of it, implies very deep, not too much focus on the roam either, necessarily. As you can see, probably via that Jackal ban. Although that did come out from APO, so I'm not 100% sure why they would do that on their own attack first. So maybe we'll see that benefit come out later on in the game. For now, we start out with a CCTV and cash hold. Don't know what to anticipate from IOM here, because it could be anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, I expect them to go with a fairly standard take. You're going to be seeing that with Mai playing on Rafters. He'll have a Maestro cam to help him remove any drones. Interesting placement here, low down so it can't get caught out by something like a Gon 6 or an Ash breaching charge. Not that there's an Ash on the table. Obviously, you still be able to bank a frag grenade onto it or get it later on, but it's still interesting to try and slow down it getting rid of. And obviously, it's still going to be effective in removing those drones. So seeing Deathly set up the sights with some angles that he will have avenues to throw these gas canisters later on, because you're expecting the attack to get into site eventually. You're expecting them to get onto server and try and set that diffuser. The real plan here is you want to just see how much time you can stall before that happens, so that you're set in a position with these nitro cells, with these Maestro cameras that they have available, to be able to stop that plant from coming through.
Well, there's a lot to counter those Maestro cams. Those 6 nades in the hands of APO. They're already quickly to work. The Maverick, Peak, obviously 6 picking. Giving your random new player the 6-pick option as well is quite a call, I must add, on top of that. So he's already getting to quick work. Breach is open as well. The Buck using his hard breach charge to get open the garage and put immediate pressure onto the players above on Rafters. But they do have support down in Lounge as well. This open setup by Beng might give them some security. It's actually Scipio, holding that position right now, looking to find that early win. If he can take out potentially the Hibana in this spot, that would be a great little addition before the action goes. It's actually the Maestro to find the first, but Peak straight away in support of Jaff.
Yeah, the question will be how much of that wall were they able to open up before Maverick fell. Not a pick you want to be losing early on, and it can really hurt, but they should have enough wall where Kovac can rotate on that Hibana to get that wall opened up. Buck, I knew, with those hard breach charges, okay, the Gemini's gone, but he's been able to open up into Garage, but now the pinch is coming through onto the Bandit of Scipio, and while they're trying to look for him here, they know he's in Lounge, and I knew just holding this angle very patiently. They have this rotate covered as well, so a couple spots, he's going to get caught out, he moves in. He's able to get one for his troubles, though. That's Kovac going down. The secondary hard breacher. No more hard breach available to them, as Buck has used both those charges already.
Just trades all around, everything being equalized so far in the round. Someone will have to make that step forward. APO, they've got ample amount of time to try and flush TXC out of this spot on the top of the rafters. It will be Nerf and Noob pushing towards him. He can definitely hear them underneath. He's just got to be ready to take that first one. He does! Down goes Noob. Nerf coming for the second, and he can't take it either. MP5K climbs to Peak, the lone player, the sub, left all outside. He got that early frag, but that might just be it for average players, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult for him to find a way in. 37 seconds, can't rule it out just yet, but that deployable shield isn't going to help as the smoke's starting to come through, just completely choking him out of these spots. And with the amount of angles that IOM even have opened up, it's going to be so hard to make your entrance through one of these windows. The time hits 22 seconds, smoke's still waiting with the remaining canisters. I'm sure this is going to be it for the round. There's no way he wins the 1 versus 3 here. And, I don't want to say I cursed it, but, you're going to watch him just wait it out in this doorway. Get caught out by Deathly with the shotgun prone at his feet. It's a nice way to end the round, and I mean, IOM taking that opening cash round can be very happy with the job they did. Doing a good time stalling downstairs. Despite losing your roamers, they never were losing members. They were always finding the pick and getting refragged out, which is a great way to play a defensive half. You just play very patiently and force the attackers to make those mistakes, which APO did.
Yeah, APO were trying to be on the front foot a lot of the time. I feel like this is the battle of the front foot teams, really. Trying to get that first one in, but always finding the equalizer. APO, it did seem quite strong. I was quite impressed. They seemed like they were addressing the right areas. They seemed quite well put together. But of course, you see Pete being left by himself in the wrong position, not quite in alignment with the rest of his team. I think he was relying upon the fact that the 2 people inside a garage could take that one fight, but there wasn't even a refrag in that spot. Hugely influential. Left the round to IOM. Tight margins, but they still managed to take the victory. They are 1-0 up. They will move down to the basement for the next site. Very similar lineup, but they will stick with that Valkyrie this time. Scipio adopting the role.
Yeah, I think Valkyrie's brilliant on this site. There's a lot of destructible floor, specifically upstairs in kitchen, which you can see him in at the moment, trying to hide a camera way up the side. I mean, you're looking for those nitrocell picks. If you can find them early on, it's just freebies that you just have to take. Yeah, putting his Maestro camera upstairs, and this is just looking down towards that hatch, maybe try and catch up some of those Habana pellets. I'm sure they'll see the shotgun holes, but if they don't, this is going to be an amazing take from them to just steal that away from the Habana, maybe try and waste some pellets. And they have the hard recharge on the fuse, so they'll still be able to get some hatches opened up, but you don't want to be losing intel these hard recharges for free, and just a very fun way to try and catch out your opponent with the cameras.
So the Maestro is retracting now. I believe that's Angelo, which is TM.
Yes.
For everybody at home who's not aware. He's retracted away from that position. They've opened up the angles as some sort of faux ghost presence, and then just left entirely, trying to waste maybe time of their opposition in case they didn't notice that on the drone. But Peak's noticed it. In he goes. He's getting to work on his hard breach and his cluster charges, starting to clear out anything down below. Don't believe there was a Maestro camera in that position, but he's got the hatch open by the looks of things. No! He's down! Unfortunately, Deathly with a lovely C4, and the push from the tunnel doesn't work either. Down goes Jaff. No refrag support close by. Already a huge disadvantage dealt to average players.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why there was no one following Jaffa up inside of dirt. Maybe it was a miscommunication. You saw Kovac nearby, but there's still hatches to get upstairs, and losing your fuse kind of means that you're going to have to be using that Habana to get upstairs. So just a breakdown in communication there, but you can see this defensive lineup is preying on it, just waiting around for these roamers.
They did manage to prevent the kitchen hatch from being opened at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe that was the Maestro camera upstairs inside of logistics, just shooting through the floors they made. I mean, this is not a great start for an attacking lineup, because you lost half the round and you don't have a massive amount of trophies. You've got that kitchen control and now Nerf on that main stairs, but they don't know about Scipio roaming around behind them. You have to be very careful, as the Nitrocell going to distract him while he swings round and takes out Ainoob. Angelo finding Nerf at the bottom of the main stairs at the same time. Even if one goes back in the other direction, definitely falling from the above fire, it's not good enough to really get anything done, as Angelo will be injured by Kovac, but still has 3 others to find. I'm sure that Maestro will be able to. Oh no, it looks like he's not going to be recovered, but I don't see this ever ending positively for Apo.
Either way, I don't think that Hibana will necessarily know. She's seen the bloodstains on the floor, so potentially could figure out via that. But either way, there's still 3 standing players. Her position's known, puts the gun down for a moment to run, and she's just run into the dirt by the Valkyrie, flanking up the stairs to catch her off at a moment of weakness. And all round, I think the entire round, you could sum it up as a moment of weakness from the attackers there. Didn't look together at all. A momentarily promising start, but it was just a flash in the pan. A second round for the defense.
Yeah, they weren't aware of that magic hammer upstairs, which stopped them from getting that kitchen hatch, and then getting caught out by a nitro cell. I mean, it happens. It's just very unfortunate to see the fuse not really able to drop its full payload. You've still got 3 of those cluster charges left in your pocket, unable to be spent on anything. And well, they're going to be sticking this Ying in this round, despite some changes at Osa obviously not being quite a legal operator. Seeing the Zofia brought out instead. And I mean, they've had an interesting change up in these operators. We see Peak changing it every round. You watch the Sledge in the first, then the Fuse, and now the Ying, looking for this kind of execute heavy operator to try and help them clear out some of their way in towards this gym bedroom site. You're never going to go stop as a defender, so you know this is the 3rd site that's going to be brought. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to clear out this cache server side first. I think you have to, as an attacking lineup. It's too much of a dangerous position to leave open. But we'll have to see how much they invest in doing so. They have the Maverick, who can open up some of these walls, and they've got the Thermite as well. That should be enough spread of hard breach to kind of do anything they want to, as long as they manage it well and push together. They seem to support these operators in doing their job.
Yeah, it's got versatility, this lineup from the attack, but then it lacks that specificity in certain areas. That Jackal you might want to have, for example, who they banned out to catch off players like Scipio, who will be going for these early peaks, or just providing presence to irritate anyone in the spawn and make sure that they don't move in too quickly. Either way, there is nobody there. They're moving across instead from the northwest sides. Scipio just moves elsewhere. He goes towards the tunnel and catches the lone player on the Zofia, Ainoob, just walking in the tunnel by himself without checking. A very silly and quite elementary mistake.
Yeah, it's not a brilliant play to be making, and sometimes it will work, but oftentimes it doesn't. It's not one I'm a fan of, seeing these kind of solo Rambo missions and through the bottom of the map. But some people are gonna give it a go, and when it works, it seems great, and it's that sort of feeling of we win match to make it work. But the Ying,
in she comes, and Angelo takes it down. Very simple. Peak looks like he was about to be he's about to open this round entirely, but the Jaeger finds another, and it's all gone terribly wrong. Another from the Mirror, doubles from the Jaeger and Mirror alike. Round taken instantly by the defense. It seemed a great adjustment. They noticed a weakness, the attack, but then couldn't take any of their kills on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, they lost their opening member downstairs. Whether they just thought the round was over and they just wanted to send it, I'm not quite sure what happened. Whether they were setting themselves up for that in the first, I'm a little bit confused, I have to go. There wasn't a massive amount of setup, and you kind of know that the attack will hear you drop, the defense will hear you drop, and there's plenty of defenders around. It's not like they left site open for the taking. Maybe a bit of a hasty call to all drop down there. It was a little bit I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of that one, but it didn't work out very well for them. I can see what they were trying to go for, try and catch IOM off guard, because when they've tried to play into this defensive setup that IOM have been bringing every single round, they just keep getting caught out. I mean, you're looking at the first round, Rafters, they couldn't break it. The second round, they couldn't find their foothold inside a kitchen, they were getting caught out from all these vertical angles. And that last round, I mean, they didn't even start to make their way over to cash, but I can imagine them having a little bit of difficulty trying to break it, and maybe that's why they want to just circumvent it altogether.
Partially, I mean, they're struggling with the frags so far in this game. Just in terms of straight gunfights, they are losing them. The stats are not in their favor at the beginning of this game. They realized that a bit of strategy, a bit of surprise can help you out in that element, but Imperium and Mandem just look completely aware. They are ready for any eventuality that comes their way. 3-0 advantage already. Quite a big chunk of this defensive half gone. Average players... Oh, Peak, I was just about to say, he's getting very, very close to some feet there. Doesn't deal any damage, unfortunately. And there were a lot more... It was a bit of a closer round the first time we saw this site from average players only. And they brought a very similar lineup to try and get the job done again.
Yeah, I mean, just making sure you don't lose that Maverick early on to give yourself that breach space, watching out for any potential aggression from Angelo in this position, but deathly getting caught out by Ainoob on the window. That's a brilliant opening pick, and that's what you were talking about, finding these frags early on. Will definitely start to help them as Angelo trying to find something back in return, but I'm not going to risk anything. He's going to fall back to a little bit of safety, set himself up to go again.
Especially with the Mute, an extra C4 as an option, with the Valkyrie and the Maestro providing intel on the site. If APO get that close enough to a plant in the late round, which you imagine they might well have done, they could have been in trouble there, so that definitely helps in quite a few separate regards. Still a lot of utility within the site, and they've not used any of those nades yet. A lot of utility still waiting to be used, and Scipio's going to try and take it out of their hands nice and quickly with these forward-looking peaks. Kovac again in a position to be taken advantage of if he's not careful, as he doesn't have the support. Instead, looks like a bit of a switch-up from APO. We've got players sent over Construction Way instead at this point, ready to split the attention, potentially, of some of these defenders. Again, it's actually Ainoob all alone.
I mean, he's been finding these he's been looking as a lone wolf sort of thing this whole series, and whether he's able to find anything on the backside, there's so much attention set on this garage that's when it can work. And a lovely shot from Nerf will remove the player, runs out of bullets when trying to take out Scipio, and he'll be counting his lucky charms that he's still alive in this round. And that's the only remaining Nitro Cell on the table for the defense as well. It's would have been so huge if they could able to get that. But instead, Angelo taking out Jeff. It's only 50 seconds, they're setting themselves up, but it's not, well, I say that, they're able to find the first. The Maestro's down.
40 seconds remain, a good advantage for the attackers, and they've got to use that utility now. As we spoke about before, the nades still in their favor. 2 left for Nerf, in a strong anchor position here for the attacking hold. And he finds a kill from it. Ben goes down on red stairs. Scipio all alone in cash. 1 versus 4, diffuses in Kovac's hands. He can safely plant, and Pikalicious secures the round with a lovely, incisive swing round from behind. A fantastic execute. We saw promising signs in round 1 with APO's execute. This time, so much more efficient. They're clicking into gear.
Yeah, absolutely. It just everything that went wrong the first time just seemed to go a lot smoother. They didn't lose any members clearing up the roam downstairs. They were able to take space in lower garage, which forced Scipio to fall back upstairs. They cleared out that Rafters player in pretty timely fashion. Didn't have to invest too much utility in it. They could have maybe gotten some bonuses from using something like a frag grenade, but it didn't matter in the end. Able to find the kill with Nerf with that ARX, and eventually you just forced your way out of sight. They did a very good job of just taking the space that they needed to force these defenders out of those comfortable positions that you want to sit in.
I will offer up, Golo, a bit of a... I want to build up APO because that was very nice, but some of it did kind of come down to some of that luck, because they win that fight with just a peek from the doorway. Like a single player crouching in, finding the shot. Great effort, but that was almost the hinge in that position, forcing the Valkyrie back as well towards the site, giving so much control to APO so that they can go for this execute.
Yeah,
that's what it was based on.
So yeah, it wasn't clean. Let's not.
But I will say, it's what we were talking about before, those little impact moments from individual players that can make the difference. That is the hinge of a lot of these teams, and again, proving crucial for APO. It's at least got them a little bit of confidence that they can win these rounds. First round on the board is always a nice one to lift off your chest, you know, and less pressure now. They can definitely get that 2-4 split at a minimum from this point as IOM returned down to the basement. This went very wrong for the attack last time. We've got a different lineup though to deal with it.
Yeah, they're bringing that Finker and they're not bringing that Fuse. 2 interesting, adaptations. You've got that sledge, you can start to get that floor opened up that little bit more, but early on they're looking to try and shut down this roam once again, because it's been so disruptive for them. Eventually it was what ended up catching out Ainoob on that Ash before, but they still haven't quite made their way inside a kitchen yet. Just want to be very careful of anything playing upstairs above. There's no Maestro cameras for them to have to worry about this time. Angelo instead bringing that mirror. So that should make them their time a little bit more comfortable in here. They'll just be careful of those Nitro Cells once again. They're still going to become a critical factor if they're not careful. Black Eye cameras potentially at the ready, watching their every move.
That's certainly what you'd expect. Pikalicious catches deathly off in an early moment. Again, the Mute falling first in the round. Big issue there for the defense. They still do have those 2 C4s, but the Mirror's position... oh, no, sorry, not the Mirror's position. It's... I confuse myself with where they are. It doesn't matter. It's Bang in the tunnel trying to hold this entire push back. But APO at that moment decide to change their strategy. It seems mid-round, both teams changing exactly what they're doing towards this execute.
Yeah, and they've got that main sets control with pitch and hatch opening. This drone should be able to spot out that Scipio is playing inside of Moto. They need to be very careful not to get caught out from that. There's a couple of sprays that can deal some damage onto that mirror. The frag grenade getting caught by the ADS, however. This position is still very spread out as, well, Andro taking a lot of damage, but ultimately still available to activate in this round as TXC finds Nerf. That's the Yano going down, not the pick you want to be losing at this point in the round. Scipio falling back into blue. That's a powerful position if you can just hold on.
Health whittled by the attackers. Defenders quite in a dodgy position. 3 remaining split across site. Thankfully, they do still have that tunnel control and nobody's being sent towards there, so Ben can swing if a drop is attempted. But it seems like a church execute is the way that APO are going to go. They have control of that mirror window as they've dropped down and punched it clear. That is definitely not safe ground for IOM. Peak is instead actually holding the Melusi trapped in this spot, essentially nullifying her if he does keep an eye on it close, which allows Kovac, Noob, and Jaff to put full attention towards this 3-man execute inside of Church. It does look very favorable for the attack here. It might just come down to Peak covering this moment perfectly. They're leaving it very late. They're taking their time here. Kovac trying to find an early pick before moving in. It's risky. He's going for the plant here. The Melusi finds the shot onto Peak. There's no cover. The C4 takes down the planter. It's gone from bad to even worse for the attack. It falls apart. The flank from the Melusi, not just winning the vertical fight, but coming around and sealing the final one inside of Moto. That was an incredible counter-execute from the defense.
You have to give so much props to IOM for just playing that patiently. They knew what their objective was in that round, and it was stall out the time. It doesn't matter if the attack get that Moto control, if they get that main stairs. They haven't left themselves enough time to root this Valk outside of blue, and you can see why that was such an important thing to be able to do. The Nitro Cell stopping that diffuser very late into the round, and then having angles right onto that spot where you're going to be setting down that diffuser on the soda machine. Just everything that IOM just played so smartly around the space that they need to hold on to. The only round they've lost is when they've been forced out of positions by Apo, and they're not doing it consistently enough to cause any real problems for the anchors on the side of Imperial of Mandem.
It was a very good setup by the attack. The strategy was a great idea. They left it too late. I'm not sure how they lost so many of those fights. Bang making a huge difference at the end. I want to see from his perspective what that shot was onto Peak, because I'm sure it was quite a, peak, I guess, onto him from the hatch. Brilliant play from the Melusi. And there's a counter-individual moment. After we spoke about Nerf's importance in the previous round, IOM extend their advantage. 4-1, back to a 3-round cushion for their final defensive attempt. Going back to Jim, where APO, you were certainly very critical of their attempt.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say anything really because they did just drop logistics hatch. I can't really say what they need to change other than have a standard hold. I don't know what their take is gonna look like. I'm expecting them to take cash though. This is the standard way you want to take onto the site, and it's purely because of that server window, as well as giving yourself that server, the control inside of construction. Sorry, not server, because you just want to be able to access these windows into gym, into master bedroom. And without that control, it's so easy for the defenders to contest it in a safe position. But once again, it looks like they're not trying to contest with Deathly over on this side in cash. Instead, very much playing for this logistics hatch.
I do want to point out that Peak is currently the top fragging player on the attacking side. Quite a way above the rest of the team. Doing a very good job jumping in. So good job, Peak, in that regard. It just seems the strategy is not quite there. APO very much not focusing on the cash side, which seems a bit strange because Deathly's been struggling on the entries, and he'd be a great player to move in, shut down, take that ground. TXC in close support is definitely more of the worry. But they're not going to come into play. They're going straight, instead, head on towards these mirror windows. They don't have a twitch, necessarily. I'm not seeing too much that they could use directly to counter it, other than chucking a Selma right at it, which is a very, very risky play.
Yeah, now trying to get this control, trying to disrupt some of this construction presence. DXC trying to make sure he can't cross over to support the rest of the site, which is a nice option for them if they get that opening pick, which they do. Nerf finds the mirror that clears out the bathroom spot, and Inoob on the windows doing a great job of shutting down Ben in sight. Definitely, though, finding up Inoob on this once, and that's from that window which we talked about before. He's got to try and hold on, though. They're now starting to try and put some pressure on this person. Oh, no! The Nitro Cell!
Well, Peak's here to try and recover things, as the site control has been taken by the attack, mind you. Players underneath waiting for that right call. Scipio, he's playing it calm. He's taking his time. He knows they're there. TXE knows they're there as well. They don't really need to worry about it. The plant is being attempted by Kovac. I'm expecting to see an explosion. There it goes. Scipio gets one, but his two teammates are down in the meantime. It's decent in one regard, but horrible for him in the other one. Nerf now taking up that diffuser, planting it down, Peak to cover across, using the mirror setup against the defense. An incredible insertion by the team in orange.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be such a hard position for Scipio to fight. Not that he can't. We've seen him do wonderful things throughout the season. This would definitely be up there amongst them as well. He's walking out into the sightline, sees the mirror window, is expecting someone to be playing on it, starts running in, has to take the risk of Scipio getting felled through the wall. Headshot in the blind side, and that's an unfortunate position to find yourself in on the other side of your own team's mirror, but it does sometimes happen. And I have to say, I was thoroughly impressed with Apo's take there. I mean, apart from clearing out that server, that's what led to Inoob's death. They did use those windows to excellent success at finding some of those opening picks. You've got to give a lot of credit to Nerf. Just he's been able to find in both their wins now that pick that opens up the site, that gives them that space to start to move in. But they did end up losing Inoob on that window.
There are two things that are looking good right now for average players only on this comeback. They've got to the 4-2 split. They're now on the defensive clubhouse. That's perfectly fine. A lot of teams would actually want that coming in against a team like IOM. So it's by no means a losing position. But they've shown great adaptability in terms of the strategy. I was quite happy about what they did on that previous basement attack. The execute wasn't there. This time around, other way around. Their strategy was perfectly fine. It was quite straightforward, and they executed it brilliantly. Really starting to get some kills together. Still a little bit of reliance sometimes upon Nerf and Peak getting those early picks, but with Inoob stepping up a little bit more now, there's promise there. We just need to see Kovac and Jaffa getting at least a little bit more involved in the kill feed if they're going to translate some of this good play over onto the defensive side.
Yeah, donuts are good, but eating them is better, and that is true for Siege as well. You want to make sure you're helping out your team on that scoreboard, and so far, like you say, it's kind of been the Nerf and Peak show. But this is their chance to change things up. They've got that defensive position, they've set themselves in the basement. The interesting thing here is that Kavira. We saw the Bandit come through, but with that Elite skin on, you can't stick on that, so the Kavira was what they chose to go to, hiding all the way inside of rafters. And I mean, if this works out, it would be not only wonderful to see, but very helpful for this defensive hold. It looks like very early on, Angelic's going to open up this dirt tunnel, give themselves some options, and there's not an aggressive hold on it as much as there was last time. Inoob's still in this position. It doesn't look like he has quite as much utility invested in it as before. Well, definitely finding the opening pick onto Nerf upstairs.
He's figured out how to win those entries now. That'd be definitely useful as they're moving in on the attack. Down goes the Valkyrie, but thankfully for her, she can use her Black Eyes for the rest of the round and give a lot of intel to the rest of her team. They just need to win some of these early fights. Inoob, he's certainly taken that roll up. Down goes Beng. He's ready for the supporting player as well to try and refrag. In he moves nice and close, looking for those two players behind. I don't know what quite to make of this, and we've not even alluded to Peak sneaking around on the Caviera.
Yeah, it's been an interesting take so far. I mean, that opening pick definitely helped the side of the attack, but they haven't taken this kitchen control as a response. Trying to draw out Inoob still, that Banshee that he can fall back to give him some awareness of what might be coming his way, as well as potential goos that he's going to be throwing down to block any attempt from Scipio to march on forwards. As well, they're now looking just to try and open up more of this floor. That hatch has been opened into the kitchen, which does give them an option, but without the players actively contesting it, I was going to say Inoob has an escape path, it won't matter in the end. Scipio able to take it down, securing that numbers advantage for the attacking lineup. going to take out that Banshee, and well, that's a lot of pressure that can be pinched onto these remaining defenders.
Oh, Peak's so close! He might go for the interrogation, he probably shouldn't. He goes for the impact instead. Very smart. Backs away before Deathly can respond. He's instead pushing downwards, but down he falls even further to the ground. He's down at the bottom of the stairs. No support except for TXC, but he's split attention as well. Down goes Peak whilst he tries to stop him. It's an awkward position here. The flashes just covering this revive. 3 versus 2. IOM do recover that awkward couple of seconds there. 45 seconds left still to execute. Certainly possible.
Yeah, now they just have to try and make their way into sight. Jaffa holding on very low HP means that, well, any bullet coming in his direction will remove him from play. Kovac watching for this dirt. Jaffa, though, able to find Deathly. That's the start they wanted as he dropped into the hatch. Diffuser down inside of sight, and they know it. Has to be very careful to speak from Scipio, though.
The Hibana's down. Oh, what a nade from Scipio, leaving Jaff by himself inside a church. He tries to rotate above.
Oh, that's
has
so
no
unfortunate.
idea. The finger boost revive, no! I didn't realise at first, certainly the mute didn't. What a turning point for the defence. That would have actually been a great opportunity for the mute. I think if he's a 3-speed, he could potentially have won that out, but unfortunately, no such chance. Average players only. They go back down again to a 3-round disadvantage. They can't close the gap.
Yeah, I mean, it's like being on the chase, you know, and everyone's just getting it right. And it's so painful to watch sometimes. You're like, I mean, I guess when it's on the chaser, you know, they're trying to escape with the money, so you kind of feel good for them. But here, it's just really sad because they're struggling behind. They can't quite pick up the kills. It's like, even in that round, like we talked about it before, Jaffa not quite able to get on the board there. And in a round, he's looking at potentially lining himself for a 3, for a 4K clutch there. And the Finker boost just completely ending his attempt there. And it's so sad to see as well, especially on what little HP he had working in that position. But that's how it goes. That's the power that Finker has and that flexibility. And I mean, next season it's only going to get more interesting when she can pick herself up, which is a lovely change. I love to see, but it's definitely going to become a little bit more awkward, and with kills like that becoming a little bit more frequent.
Well, much like the chase, even an incredible Bradley on screen can't necessarily save you. That's certainly the case for the team on the defense now. For anyone who doesn't know, Peak's name is Bradley, so it was a joke. Anywho, IOM with a strong advantage here. They're bringing out that Finker again, and that was a brilliant use of a utility. I've never seen anything even remotely that impactful from a Finker before. What a moment. I'll be happy to see that again. There have been some great moments in this game already. APO now going to a site they were very good on the attack, so I'm hoping they've got something similar to offer up on the defense. Mostly what you're looking at here is projectile denial like mad.
Yeah. And there is no Maverick on the side of the attack, so they'll have to go downstairs to remove this mute jammer, which looks like what Deathly is trying to do right now, trying to line up his shot from that launcher that he has. And that should be good to go. This breach getting opened up by the Thermite, but I knew the Nitro Cell on that hatch takes down the Zofia. The job is done, though. That should be enough. Oh no, they're going to have to place the charge just high enough that it goes off anyway. I think I mean, at least there's something to gain from that, but it's not ideal. I mean, that's an unfortunate loss early on, and, well, with a minute gone, APO can start to hunker down that little bit more, just try and hide this timer out. The wall still can't get opened on up.
I'm enjoying, from average players only, the fact that their roams have been one single lingering player, usually a floor or 2 above or below, lingering, waiting for the perfect moment. The use of utility has been fantastic. Angelo's just gonna blast on in. He finds the player at the top of Garage. All control now taken by Mandem. He does have the diffuser, and he might lose it in this spot as Pete jumps out inventively from construction, kills, trades all around. Man count now advantage for the defensive side. 3 versus 2. Scipio is deep within the site. He has recovered that diffuser. Well, he's right next to it at the very least, but he doesn't need it. He's going straight on in to find the kills. Doesn't quite claim Inoob. His teammate does that for him, but is down. Now it's just left to Scipio. Very, very low health on the Finker. He can boost himself. He's got 2 frag grenades. Will he be afforded that luxury of using them? No, he won't. Down he falls. Great play from Jaffa. A crazy round.
That round twisted and turned, and honestly, I didn't know where it was going to end, but we got there in the end. I mean, 2 really cool things to see. One, just the rush through the breach, just catching the whole defense completely off guard, shutting down that Rafters player. That is something you do not expect as a defense. When you hear that breach open as a Rafters player, your first thought is make sure I'm hidden behind the reinforcement, not check the headholds to make sure I'm not getting sprinted at. But then you love to see the Peakalicious flank jumping outside of the comms window, just shutting down everyone in sight. Lovely stuff.
This game started quite slow. They were taking their time, being a little bit tentative, I'd say, for both teams. But especially now with IOM on the attack, and some confidence being garnered by the 3 rounds that average players have taken, they're both starting to flaunt whatever mad idea comes into their head. They're going for it, and I'm loving it. It's creating these very dramatic rounds, and it's bringing us a little bit closer. A 5-3, still tough to call. IOM only 2 rounds away, though, from that victory, which, for everybody watching, didn't catch before, on the leaderboard will take them above their opposition here today, as there is only 2 points separating them in 6th and 4th, respectively, from left to right on your screen.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And at this rate, they looked pretty good. 1-1 on these attacking rounds, and it's back down to the basement, which they were able to kind of find a way to conquer out. Whether that's the same again, I mean, it came so close, came such down to the wire in the round. And a lot of it was just off of some really crazy opening picks on both sides. Definitely able to find that pick onto Nerf in the kitchen corridor, very swiftly followed by Inu just shutting everyone down inside of construction. Inside of dirt, if these picks don't come through, the round is completely different, and we're seeing a very different change to things. I think that's the big thing for both of these teams now, is making sure that they're the team to change losing that initial pick. They don't want to be giving up these free kills, and definitely early on entering into stock is going to be looking around for these roamers. There's none to find in this location. It changed up the pattern of play.
I'm trying to figure out what the plan is here from the defense. They've changed their operators around quite a bit, clearly having some sort of different execute. Also leaving the Legion as the lone roamer. Ainu being successful last time with that nice nade from underneath, that C4 from underneath even. Seems...
It is interesting having a Legion playing up in rafters when you have something that has less regenerative utility to impact the site.
Yeah.
And I think they've spotted him out up here as well, which is going to be a little bit dangerous because he is such an island. But there we go. He's going to be able to drop down into sight, start dropping some of these views behind him. But instead, waiting to see if anyone chases a little bit recklessly. And the drone's going up. Will spot that he's not there, but a good amount of time stalled. That's the other way to look at this. 1:20 gone from the round, nearly half of it gone. And the attack, while having some control on this middle floor, haven't found any players and haven't been able to remove this utility that the defense are holding to combat them.
To be fair,
is going to be the point of contention.
Yeah, what they have taken is what's been given to them, essentially, at this point in the round. Very little done by the defense. They're sitting deep and letting IOM waste their own time. The longer they leave this, the more rough it is going to be. Scipio, of course, they've taken the tunnel, and he's sitting there with Finker Boost, the nades, and we'll see if he gets to use them this time at the end of the round. Deathly finds the first as he takes into blue. Kovac, he's got players behind and in front, just with a tiny bit of box cover to rely upon. But as Jaffa falls, he has less and less support. He finds one inside of blue, finished off by the smoke canister, struck back by Angelo. And again, a return from the defense. 2 versus 3 for them, with Peak and his teammate Ainoob both over in church direction, which does allow this plant to go down. Oh, I'm sorry, Ainoob's actually still above. He could drop into this position. It's an inventive flank from Peak, but doesn't take the shot.
Yeah, I mean, this is so rough now. Has to find all 3, looking down on him. He's finding the first, though. Has to be careful with the Finker holding this angle. No, the ping's coming through. Able to find it with the shotgun. That's what you were looking for. The 1 versus 1, but he runs out into the line of sight. He's going to expose himself. Oh no, that's such an unfortunate way to lose that one out. Maybe the call wasn't coming through. Didn't quite know that he was hiding away inside of that dirt, and that's why those cameras weren't picking him up. But that's match point for the Imperial of Mandem, and they're going to start taking this away. And now, average players only, they have no room for any mistakes for the rest of the game. And for 3 defensive rounds to hold on to, I can't say that they're going to be able to do it.
Not with great confidence. They're certainly capable. A lot of the reliance, again, coming down to Peak to save them to some degree. And unfortunately, Ainu just couldn't work his magic the way he has previously at various points. I think he's had one of the most impactful kill games in general. Okay. Unfortunate, I guess. There will be a TK at the start of this round. Sadly. And... Oh, no.
Ainu took the TK, took the 6th pick away, has the shotgun on Rook as well. This is, What?
Dan's not impressed. Well, everybody, not quite sure what's going on there, but for now, it doesn't look very favourable for the Orange team, because it looks like maybe they'll be granted a rehost and they'll get another attempt. They're in a bad position either way, because if that isn't given to them, they've lost. So,
yeah,
rough.
Just, you want to make sure it's confirmed before you leave the lobby, at least give yourself a chance to play out the round. But if it does come back, they will have a chance to reuse that 6th pick. I think the same operators still have to be brought out, but you can change up that mirror, trying to avoid it. So that's something that they have going for them. Kind of fortunate, I guess, that Ainu had some technical difficulties there in the long run. But timing works in both ways, and there it worked out for them.
It's all about communication, whether it's with our staff to make sure that you're ready, or your teammates as well, because we've seen at various points during those final few rounds. Obviously, we're talking about the strategy and the situation for the team who've been behind the entire game, because everybody loves an underdog in general. But let's focus over on Imperium Mandem, because they have had quite a strong and consistent performance, the likes of which we haven't really seen from them this season very much, Golu.
Yeah, they've been a bit touchy all over the place, and that's why they're sitting in that 6th position currently in the lower bracket. But after a performance like today, that will shove them a little bit more comfortably up the table. Still would have to have a good result on their final Playday. But like you say, the consistency in their attacks has been fantastic to see. They're bringing themselves a very flexible lineup, which is allowing them to do everything they need to. The only round they've really run into any sort of issues in terms of their utility available was in the round attacking Cash, their second attacking round, when they couldn't quite remove that mute jammer from the main wall of server, and the Thermite had to wait that little bit of time out. It didn't really make too much of a difference in getting the wall open, and they lost the round, but it still kind of worked out for them okay when they got that breach on opened up. They were able to rush in, but maybe if they'd had that more time, they wouldn't have gone for such an extensive play. The rest of it, though, they've done a good job of taking the ground they need. In that last round, the thing you could say is that they didn't open that kitchen hatch up, but I really like how they prioritized secret and blue control. Taking that generator, I think, is the most important thing to do on an attack onto the basement. It's such a powerful position because it's what links the two sites in that basement together. And we saw how much average players only struggled when trying to plant inside of church when they didn't have that control. Scipio on that Valkyrie completely tearing them apart as they tried to get that execute together. So I think that they have the right mentality coming in. They're doing a good job of just focusing on what's important first and foremost, and doing it in pretty good time.
We're seeing opportunities open, as you alluded to with the Caviera of Peak on that particular basement attack we saw from Imperium Mandem. Left in that position, not droned out, found one, but was refragged eventually. That could have been a horrible situation. Yeah. Peak gets that little bit luckier, just... the wrong thing happens, the right thing happens in whatever situation. It's Siege, weird things can happen. He wins the round for them, almost, in that entire position, despite how well it's going on the other side, which is one of the weaknesses that we've seen exploited at various points throughout this season. You've got to be secure on all your areas, whether it's maybe flank watching, whether it's... I think the intel game for both teams might be the overall difference, because defense, it's been fantastic. We've seen so many great Valkyrie plays. We've seen Maestro Alders burring off all over the place. Whippet, he's hearing it sing all over the place. But when it comes down to the attacking, the droning, it's not been there. And a lot of that might potentially, at least on this second half, come down to the fact that we saw that Jackal ban from APO.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that they are running a lot of these aggressive roamers, and that's why they wanted to take it off the table. It's just unfortunate they couldn't kind of it almost like they almost would have benefited from having it available to themselves.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. You know, you don't want to be handicapping yourself with your bans, and a lot of the time when teams are banning that Jackal, it's because they feel very confident at just using those drones, maybe using the Yarny Geminis to spot people out pretty quickly. And, you know, sometimes you can lean into those Dokkaebi, lean into those Lions, those other operators that fall into that same category of rooting people out of uncomfortable positions, finding your roamers out and helping you to close them down. They didn't bring any of those other operators, and they couldn't quite use the drones as effectively as they would have wanted to themselves.
No, I'm really enjoying this game. This is great. I was a little bit concerned with, of course, Peak coming in, and you know that some of the kind of issues of we're not quite sure what to expect they're going to do in strategy. We're headed to Clubhouse. It was set up to be potentially a disaster, but it's actually turned out to be a really engaging strategical battle throughout a lot of these rounds, and a lot of attention on Peak in particular. I think shifting it over slightly, I want to look at Nerf as well, because his picks in a lot of these rounds, not as many maybe as some of the others within the game, but when he's found that key kill, it's almost always been the one that's blown the round open.
Yeah, you're looking at, like, for example, back on Attack, the 2 rounds they won. Attacking Cash, he finds the pick onto the Wamai holding Rafters. Yep. And we saw how much damage that Wamai did in previous attempts to take it. The next time around, you're looking at that Jim take. Finding that mirror pick is a wonderful thing to be able to do. I mean, it's such a hard fight to take a mirror against their own window, especially when
he shouldn't have won either.
On the other side. Yeah, like, it's incredible that he's able to find these picks when his team needs him to step up to. It's almost unfortunate that the rest of the team, the problem is they're relying too much on those opening picks, for their attacking side at least. And on the defensive side of things, they've done a good job at being able to find these opening picks. I mean, you're looking at Inoob, he was able to get that Nitro Cell downstairs onto Deathly through the stop catch. He's able to find picks when holding inside of a dirt tunnel onto Scipio, I believe it was. I mean, you have these players who can find the opening picks. And the problem is it's all inconsistent. It's all based off just random 1v1 engagements. And they're not, I feel like, when you look at some of the picks that are being picked up on the other side of things, the reason why they're just losing out more is because there's always that kind of backup option for Imperial of Mandem when they're taking these gunfights, and the same isn't ringing true so far for APO all the time, which is what you need to have happen.
Yeah, that kind of refrag support, the 3-second rule for a lot of players. And at the moment, a lot of the time, it does actually seem to be Peak, surprisingly, in those positions. Whether he's just following people around or whatever it is, he is playing the role very well for his team, and it's helping out. It's kept them in there just about. Obviously, swapping in for Orca today, playing usually quite a similar pivotal role within the team. We are nearly back in, everybody, so don't worry about that. Just waiting on the one player right now. We should be back in a moment. And what's the next game coming up whilst we're waiting around? Do you know what the next game is? Because it's not going to be us bringing it to you. I don't remember who's coming. Isn't it Jerry?
Alpha versus DBH is the call coming through. And then I believe it's Sleepy Yang and Rank Monkeys. Whether that one...
Oh, that was a forfeit already.
Okay, so Rank Monkeys not turning up for that game, so that means Sleepy Gang obviously taking the win there. But you know, Alpha vs DBH should be an entertaining match. I think DBH have had some consistency issues through the season, and so I think you can go into that one expecting it to come down to Alpha. But Rank Monkeys, DBH have had some really good attempts, and if they can shore themselves up, I think they have a good chance of making a run through playoffs. I mean. It is interesting looking at across the whole league when you're looking at where this is going to end up teams for playoff, because I think the biggest difference in who's in the upper bracket, who's in the lower, is just how well they've been playing together as a unit consistently. The teams at the bottom of the side, they have some really great individual players who have had some amazing moments throughout the league. I mean, I don't think you can really say that there are many players here who are not pulling their weight on their teams.
No, not really. I mean, there are naturally some players who will be playing roles where they get less kills, less direct impacts, and less intel plays. We don't know if somebody's calling all the shots very specifically that's helped, for example, Peak get all these kills. Maybe it's all to thank for somebody else, particularly on this lineup. So there is a bit of a murky room there. And hopefully, I think that's on some of the players and the teams and everybody to communicate that, because
absolutely.
I have great respect, obviously, as a Clash main and a support player in general. I really do enjoy those sorts of players and bringing that to light as well. So talking about Team Alpha and Delta Bad Hand coming up next. Delta Bad Hand, they're sitting on 2 points for this season currently. They are not going to be able to qualify for any higher spot. They are stuck right in either 8th or 9th for this season. They are playing for pride. They are playing also, I think, to get a bit of momentum going so that once they get into that lower bracket, they feel a bit more ready to take on some of these bigger teams and start their ascension. Whereas their opposition, Team Alpha, they want to try and take that top spot. They won't be able to very easily, as they're currently in 3rd. Sleepy Gang with that forfeit. That would have been the game afterwards against Ranked Monkeys. They've already won that, and they are sitting comfortably 3 points above them in 2nd. So almost a bit of a gap forming at the top, which is going to make things a bit more desperate on the final Playday, which is next week.
It is going to be very interesting. I mean, I think Aces, you got to look at them as kind of the favorite to take this top spot. It's going to be hard. I can't see them really faltering towards the end. They found a bit of momentum in this latter half of the season. They've really been pushing those wins. So it's a difficult one to see, but yeah, it's going to be Sleepy Gang. If there's a team to knock them out, it's going to be them. They've looked so strong. Their only loss is from a forfeit. That's because they couldn't get all their players together. I mean, as a team, they are looking very scary, and Alpha coming up next, and then against Aces on the final Playday. If they can take that game, that is a potential first seed. You know, you get the 3 points today, go up to 19, get that win, take another 3, jump up to the top, and then these 3 teams are the ones you're chasing. It's been a very interesting run seeing these 3 teams battling it out throughout the season. They've always kept each other neck and neck.
I mean, that's the tale for pretty much the entire leaderboard, really. It's all very tight, except for a tiny little bit of a gap at the bottom. But everybody's putting in a great effort, and there have been some fantastic matches. As you can tell, if you don't already follow the Twitter, I don't know what the @ is, but I've seen it popping up all over the place. I've not really been involved in this season. This is my first and only cast this entire season, unfortunately. But I've been kept up to date by a lot of the chaos that's been going on over on the socials. So if we do have something to flash, or if you actually remember what the name is, Golu. We can tell people that, because there's a lot of good content going on there, thanks to the gang behind the scenes.
So you want to be checking @Buell_GG on the Twitter to find everything that's going on. Clips, highlights from the week, they're always going to be there. It's always really fun. I mean, I think the opening Playday, we saw the ace from, was it Proctor? On Ludens with the alibi on Chalet.
Proctor always provides entertaining moments.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy.
We're back!
We are back to Clubhouse, back to seeing what's going on. Oh, and we've removed the Mirror Elite in the meantime. Lovely stuff.
Hey, very nice.
Break efficiently.
She's slightly less decorated this time around, but we'll get to see what she does in terms of setup. Again, APO opting for a lot of projectile denial. And of course, the 6-picks have to be to the same ops, so what's the point in that? Either way, the Rook will be opted for, which will definitely help out when it comes down to that late hold, which is what we saw last time. We've seen every time, practically, from these teams. And Peak, I'm quite surprised that he's going for a safer role.
I mean, it is a safer role, but you got to consider that you have the Vector in hand, and the Vector is a monster of a weapon. It is scary to be on the receiving end of that.
I'm thinking more strategy-wise in terms of the setup from the defense. He was so close to winning the round by himself on that Cav roam before, and IOM didn't really address it. They just got a bit lucky in taking him out. So I am quite surprised he's opted away from it.
My assumption here is that when you're coming in as a sub, you don't want to try and rock the boat too much on what a team is trying to have around. And I think if it's an interesting one. Like I understand the conundrum here. You know, do you want to just stick him back on getting some kills? But I think just the value of those mirror windows is too impactful. We've seen a couple times in different rounds throughout the game how much power and how much influence you can exert over set areas. I mean, we saw before, it was Jaffa on that mute, playing on that church triple wall, trying to contest, trying to fight back against that main stairs push. If you have that information to assist you in that position, you can really start to put some pressure in. You have those guided nitro cells over the top of the wall. You have that kind of more information on what's coming from Moto, what's coming from the main stairs. I think that's just the goal with it. But I do understand what you're saying here. You know, seeing something spicy is always fun as well.
It's good that I can be understood as a caster.
I
for
understand
once,
everyone.
somebody gets it. Yeah.
It's my natural talent.
Well, during the early round,
smart.
definitely he's going to be contesting the cage position towards Noob.
Ooh.
Only for about a second, 2 seconds. He's down. Off he goes.
Yeah, I mean, a spawn peak followed by getting them demolished. You know, not the ideal way to open up your round. And
Nope.
well, 45 seconds in, you've already got that opening pick as the defense, and the impact trick's trying to come through here, slow down this Hibana opening up the hatch. I believe they caught 2 pellets there, so a couple more coming through as iNoob's moved into position to join the impact trick parade, but
yeah,
eventually they'll get this hatch open.
Oh!
Give me a what? He's ran in dirt.
He's blasted in the tunnel, taken down 2. He has been shut down in response, so still things okay for the defense. They've recovered that position, still sitting tight within the site, but they are pressed in. IOM now taking the time to figure out exactly what they need to do. They have a lot of hard breach available. They've still got all the soft destruction they might want, and there's a lot still to be offered up by the defense, by the attack. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Kovac is down. Kovac is taking 1. I'm getting it all wrong. It's opposite day.
I mean, 2 members now on very low HP, but Kovac in the danger zone here. A breath of any of these guns remaining from the Hibana. Well, I say Hibana's gone now, so that's one less thing to worry about, as Benj gonna find himself in the 1 versus 3.
Golly, just opposite day the whole way.
Oh, yeah. You go to say something and they're dead, and it's like, oh, never mind, I'll stop talking, sort of deal. But now, looking down at this mirror
the
window,
sledge with a 3-man advantage. He's sitting in a... Deary me.
Dear. It's been a long one, boys. Let's keep this. You know, let's not get overboard with it. But I think this round, you know, it's the start that APO needed. They needed this pick up this round. I mean, because it's match point otherwise. They lose if they don't. Oh, the one-high disc catching it out.
Oh dear. Didn't quite have the time to check out the surrounding area too much, and it's unfortunate for Benj because he can't manage to flush somebody out of a position. He's just going to be dropping down a hatch to his death, even if he does so. I've loved the adjustment from APO. They've taken the time, almost using that rehost as a bit of a tactical timeout to see what they want to do as Nerf finishes it off. They take their 4th round, and with a bit of a pause, a bit of a shuffle in terms of strategy and mentality, taking the first win coming back in. Only 2 rounds left to do, and they've got 2 defenses at Clubhouse. Yeah, I'm quite confident they can find their way back in and nab themselves at the very least an overtime point.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to try and figure out a way to win CCTV, followed by a gym, but that's not the end of the world. You know, we've seen teams do it all the time, and Cash, just Clubhouse as a map. You know, these offensive sides, you can have good momentum and you can really take them under your control. Opening on this Cash CCTV, that is the one that they're going to be more comfortable with. I think a lot of teams are going to share that as people are just back on that Aruni. They're going to be a little bit more careful of the rush through the breach this time.
Yeah.
Caught them off guard a little bit. Even if they recovered the round, you know, you don't quite want to be getting caught by that too much.
Yeah, I do love that strategy. I mean, it was all... I think it was Shift when he was IGLing Jaeger's esports back in the day. They used to run it every single time, and it's a back and forth strategy. I'd say it's about 50% whether it's going to work or not. It rarely works twice in a row. I wouldn't recommend it if you're Angelo, but hey ho, you know, he might want to do what he wants to do. Looking at the defensive lineup though, I do have some little questions in that they are again opting for triple projectile denial, and we're not seeing that many projectiles necessarily. There are smokes being brought by the thermite again, and some stuns and frags, but it's nothing like we saw on APO's attacks, for example. They don't. I don't know if maybe that Aruni's being brought for something else in particular. Maybe that kind of utility advantage of. Almost the Intel style of waiting for the gate to go down before somebody pushes you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the flexibility that Aruni has in her kit, is that it can catch those grenades. It also just lets you know where people are coming from, like you say. And I mean, it has been interesting. We haven't seen a ton of frag grenade play really coming in to push out these positions, instead relying on a lot of gunfights.
Well, that's why it's confusing. I don't know why we don't see maybe an extra Maestro instead of one of these players, but either way, we'll see if it works out. Those projectiles are definitely not going to be an issue, you would expect, for the defense within this round, as Tien's already trying to place his first exothermic charge. the support of the Zofia, just ignoring that mute jammer. That change really working out for Angelo. Again, he pushes into the site. He's in CCTV, but he loses the fight this time inside of the garage. Thankfully traded out by Scipio. Definitely picks up another elsewhere, and one more on top of it. It's only iNoob. He finds the first. 3 more to deal with, but his position is known inside of construction. The open angles being more his enemy at this point. The flank underneath might work brilliantly. He's got the black eye giving him the intel. He stops the plan. A brilliant C4 attempt, but it's nothing. It's no matter within the round for IOM. They take a 7-4 victory.
I mean, a lot of credit to them. Yeah, just having the balls to go for that again. I mean, I'm not sure why there's no one kind of expecting that, no one waiting for that. The holes weren't made for that Wamai to be ready. He had to use the impact, able to win out that gunfight, but exposed himself to the angle from Gaishore at the same time. I mean, a very aggressive play from Imperial of Mandem to end off the game. And, I mean, it kind of sums up how the whole second half of this game, when both these teams found their footing, there's been a lot of aggressive plays and things sped up a little bit. And, well, Imperial of Mandem wanted to speed it up just that little bit more.
I'm loving the spirit, though, shown by a lot of these teams. Even in those 1 versus X situations, you've got individual players, calls on the intel, going to deny the plant, running around, just being caught off occasionally, you know, by the Hibana flanking round at the end there, for example. But there are so many promising signs from these two teams, and most of it in regards to intel. I am loving that defensive flexibility. If there were a Valkyrie ban this game, it could have been a 7-0 the other way around. It would have been a completely different lineup.
I mean, you can see why she demands such a high ban rate. It was like 80%
Anybody playing against these guys in the next round, in the qualifiers, ban Valkyrie. You've seen it here. Ban her.
Yeah. Well,
they won't know what to do.
It's like 3 rounds we didn't see a Valkyrie across the 11 played. Yeah, that's a lot of Valkyrie.
It is, and very impactful Valkyrie on top of that.
Yeah.
So very strong play. Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be going to a break because the next game will be on nice and shortly between Team Alpha and Delta Bad Hand. So we will see you there in just a moment. I have been Ebac. I've been joined today by Golu. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you in a blob.
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat on my skin takes me back to the time met you on a Friday, halfway out at the door of the club, playing soul on the weekends. Stayed in bed till Wednesday. Fell in love with you right there and then. I was young, couldn't see that. Leather jacket, though it's too cold. Saw your face in the crowd, and I think we'll all die. Her just perfect, yeah, she's beautiful. Never thought you'd be here, it took me by surprise when I met you in the doorway. I had a friend, you're a friend. Never thought I would see you this soon, but hope she really loves you. 'Cause I swear you deserve everything. Wish that I knew that sooner. We got sober, it was over, but I told you I'll do it all over again. At your place over spring break, a heartache. I'll do it all over again. Do it all over Tell me a lie, and I tell you too. I say that I'm happy for the two of you. You wanna be friends, but I don't think I can. But I wanna be happy, happy for
Hello, welcome back to Buell Playday number 8. And I'm Golem Molu, I'm here for your second game, and I'm joined by Toodles. Welcome to the stream, it'll be a lovely evening of games, hopefully.
Yeah, lovely evening of games, but unfortunately it is going to be just a tad bit shorter than we are expected, than we usually is going to be expected. We do have one more final matchup lined up on the docket for you guys, which is going to be Team Alpha versus Delta Bad Hand. And naturally, we just witnessed a really, really amazing game just a couple of moments ago with Peak, the boss man himself, coming in on the side of APO and just crushing it. Really couldn't pick up the victory over there, but, you know, he kind of just went full circle as the usual natural cycle of working esports goes. You can't play, you go and coach. You can't do that, you go and become a caster. You can't do that, you work in production. And when that fails, he goes back to being a player, and he shows us all that he still got it. So, you know, A+ performance for Peak right over there, but sadly we won't get to see the big boss man anytime soon, as, yeah, Alpha versus Delta Bad Hand is going to be our one and final matchup that we have on the docket, as I said, for this particular Playday. And after that, naturally, tomorrow we've got some more matches, and this is going to be the final Playday before we actually scooch on over towards LAN. So this is going to be sort of like the last-ditch attempt for a couple of teams that are in the struggle bus to maybe make that top 4 seeding to get themselves into LAN. I'm really excited to see exactly how these last 2 Playdays are going to be panning out.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting match here. Obviously, Team Alpha, second place at the moment. Well, third after the recent win of Sleepy Bang, getting that forfeit earlier on in the day. But, 16 points, if they can win out their game today, that brings them back to joint second place. And their last Playdate is against Aces, who are that first-seeded team. If they win then maybe they can steal away that first spot for themselves and guarantee that LAN spot and not have to go through the playoffs. But it's kind of all up in the air to see how that's going to go. They only have one loss on record, and that was to the Imperium of Mandem in a, somewhat one-sided affair, 7-2 scoreline in that result. And, they have had 3 buys as well, which means that we haven't quite seen everything that this team has got up their sleeve. Their opening Playday win, they've had an overtime win, they've had a regular time win, which was a massively one-sided 7-1 affair. They've been a little bit all over the shop, but a very good roster that really can be putting the hurt on Delta Bad Hand today.
Exactly, and obviously, speaking about Team Alpha, it has been a while since they have been performing and actually played right here in Boole. They've been on a hiatus for roughly about 3 Playdays thus far, so they may be a little bit rusty, or they may have been just scrimming about and actually having a little bit of fun with the game as per usual. But obviously, we've got a little bit more interesting things to talking about, so why don't we go ahead and actually crunch some numbers? I think that's something that we can both probably enjoy. So here are the current stats as things stand right now for both the side of Team Alpha as well as Delta Bad Hand. Obviously, on the side of Team Alpha, like I said, not all too much to show just because they have played a minimal amount of matches thus far in the season, but still some good overall stats all across the board with lots of positive ratings. Aztec, unfortunately, the only person that doesn't have anything to show. And then naturally we've got the likes of both Atlantic and Reich, who have been top fragging in almost every single one of the performances thus far, with Reich obviously being the MVP. It is clear as day. High KD, really outstanding costs as well, and just absolutely cracking it in the frag department for the side of Team Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, it's a player who you're looking at to be that impact player that you can to experience, obviously going to help out, and it's a bit more of an even spread on the other side of the things. You're looking at Delta Bad Hand, who, 4 of their players are somewhat close inside a contention. It's just going to be about which one's going to be able to step up and make the difference in today's game if they want to really start to put the hurt on Team Alpha. But it's not out the question. I mean, you're looking at James there on the side of Delta Bad Hand, has had some phenomenal performances inside of Buell this season, and it may have that potential there. It's just about making sure that they can draw that out of their players.
It is going to be a really tough endeavor for Delta Bad Hand to maybe actually go... I mean, mathematically speaking, right now they are basically out of the running to get themselves into LAN, but that doesn't necessarily need to be the end of their run throughout the 4th season of Bull for them, because they find themselves now in a position where they can heavily disrupt the outcome for which teams will make it to LAN and which ones won't. That is something that they can have an impact in. But, let's not waffle for any too much longer, because we do have to keep things a little bit running. So we are very close to having all 10 of the gladiators inside of the server, but let's go ahead and actually take a look at which arena we will be battling on this evening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that Oregon gets taken out. We've seen a lot of Oregon, especially from Delta Bad Hand. They've played it a couple times this season, but it looks like it's still in the pool as Clubhouse and Coastline are going to be ones to be taken out of the pool. We'll have to see what they're going to spice up just a little bit. Still means we've got Villa, maybe a Villa game. That could be good fun to see. It's a slightly more interesting map, but it is going to be that Oregon that both of these teams are going to handshake back onto once again. I mean, look, Oregon, it's not the most exciting map to play.
Nope.
I think we can all agree we've seen a lot of it.
We have.
But it's a map which is open to innovation. There's a lot of things that can change up depending on how the map bans work out. I mean, I think you're looking at a couple powerful operators, something like a Wamai. You can lean back with that buff that he's had into that sort of projectile catch meta, rock your shields, bring that Goyo. You've got things like the Flores to completely remove that aspect of the game with those Rotera drones. We've seen a lot of Flores bans, especially on Oregon, by some of these teams in the league, because they just want to be able to play in those positions without having to worry about those RCXDs. I think that's where it's going to be. It's going to be important to see how these teams try and innovate, and I hope they do. Because when we've seen innovation on Oregon, it's been so interesting to see. I mean,
Yeah,
there was
it
the
can
classic
be.
take of the Buck being brought to clear out for that small tower take, up white stairs, up through big window, into kids' dorms. These
Yeah.
kind of takes are very fun.
They are really, really fun, and obviously, as opposed to when Oregon, the reworked version of that was first introduced many, many moons ago, we have come such a far way into the way that
Yeah.
we actually handle Oregon. And while I can't necessarily speak from the heart that I really map, at the very least, when I see something new and flashy, just like you were talking about, it can really put a spring in my step and actually make me enjoy the most boring map within the competitive pool. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It is Borrigan. This is, by the way, the first Rainbow Six cast that I have had under my belt for probably the last month and a half or so, and I could not have wanted a better map to get back into the scene with. Obviously, hint of sarcasm right there. Jumping straight into the operator bands. Obviously, we've got Thatcher once again being sat on the bleachers. It is relatively to be expected, but as far as the last 3 bands are concerned, they could be very, very wild. I would have been surprised. No, I am surprised to see an IQ ban because she, as an operator, doesn't really find herself in the best competitive viability status right now. So to see her outright banned here, it feels out of place.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that this is what Delta Bad have leaned into, and it implies that they'll want to be running something like the Valkyrie, the Echo, to try and get that hidden information to catch out their attacking foes. But again, like you say, there's no real way in which IQ provides utility to the team, and that's why she's so vulnerable. Cade and Mira are the remaining bans, which means that Valkyrie is in play. So I'm expecting to see it pretty much every round. The Mira, the Cade, both very standard bans. Cade is going to be very difficult to deal with without the help of that Thatcher. You've got the Maverick, who can circumnavigate those walls by tricking them open, or just torching a little square or circle to walk on through. But ultimately, they're going to choose to not have to worry too much. And the Mirror, that asymmetric information game, which you're still going to have access to through something like the Valkyrie, is going to be limited somewhat.
Yeah, naturally with the recent changes that Valkyrie has seen in the most recent patch, you can't obviously keep those cameras outside anymore without them actually being disconnected. So obviously the potential to go for some kind of aggressive plays, maybe over towards school bus, or maybe even outside a lobby or garage, while we don't see it all too often in this particular tier of Siege, the availability to go off for throwing black eye cameras outside and going for aggressive swing or jump out, it is still there, but at the very least, it is going to be put aside for the time being. As a substitute, though, we do have Jill bringing out the Clash, an operator which can be extraordinarily oppressive and definitely suppress some of the progression that the attackers may or may not try to make. I've got to say that just immediately right off the bat, I'm loving the picks that we are seeing, specifically with that Clash throwing a spanner into the works of the attacker. And then we've basically got the polar opposite of that, which is Malu on the Aruni. Not on the Aruni, excuse me, on the Maru. Right. Been a hot second, like I said, since I casted Siege. There are over 60 operators to remember, okay? I'm taking up a lot of memory usage to try to get this done. So Omaru's going to be brought on now with a Supernova as well. I'm interested to see exactly what this South American operator can bring into the table.
Yeah, I do sometimes wonder how much more like useful information I could be filling my head with, rather than random like matches from like 2 years ago in Pro League that I just like remember watching like absent-mindedly while doing something else. It does, you know, it's a little bit worrying, but it's coming in helpful now, so we move. I'm interested to see the Clash play all the way on the other side of the map, you know, nowhere near sight, going on the roaming Clash extravaganza, I guess, maybe her own little odyssey. But, I mean, it's a very fun operator. I love that we're seeing it. What's going to be interesting to see is how this knock is used in tandem with the Amaru. Because, well, this window is looking like it's going to be the target here, as the Gyro Hook will be able to get you into that site very early on, and anyone standing too close to that window will be on the receiving end of a flying boot kick. But the drone's coming through, spying out Aztec. That's going to force this Jaeger back. But, Doodles, we're a minute in, and there's nothing really to show for it on the side of the attack.
Sadly, no, that is probably the truth right now. I mean, Delta Bandhand, they have gotten a little bit of territory controlled over towards Tower, and you've obviously got the likes of Malu and James outside a big window waiting to make the ingress on towards the bomb site, and James, well, I mean, obviously you've got yourself your presence suppression gadget, but that's not really going to help you when your full body is exposed to the likes of... Well, to the likes of Trexno, who is going to be able to draw first blood right over here, and Delta Badhand, well, they're starting to falter, and they haven't really made any great strides. We still are just waiting for Malu to maybe make some kind of entry, but we have now just seen those X-Kairos pellets actually be tossed on out. Attic will be breached, and Mr. Joe, well, the SMG can definitely prove to be a very oppressive weapon, as he will double down and find a second frag. As Aztec, who was on the roam, is now going to start aggressing over towards that staircase. Will be able to catch up, at the very least, the Hibana of Dinkley off guard. Diffuser now dropped and no longer in the control of the attack. It is a complete collapse, as Vulcanoid is the last remaining player on White Stairs.
Yeah, Mr. Joe getting taken out by his own team, that's always a tragedy to see. But I guess that's some sort of repayment for the last time that he was joining their roster. Vulcanoid now, well, in a little bit of a tough spot. She has 4 to find. It's not really going to be happening, but we'll have to see if we can pick up those exit frags before the round is come to a conclusion. The Banshee will give away her position here on Armory Staircase. But the looks of the defense are playing very systematically. They're playing very rigidly. They're not going to give away any peeks here. They don't want to open up the round. And with 20 seconds left, this should be all that can be said for the round as well. The Thunderbird pushing down with that bearing 9 seals the deal.
Indeed, it does. Quite a bit of a lackluster start off to Oregon, at the very least, for DBH right over there. Obviously, Oregon is a map that we should know like the back of our hands, but they had way too many hurdles to try to climb over and jump over at the start of that very round. And obviously, you know, sometimes the cookie just crumbles in a certain way that leaves you in a very unlucky position where you're simply caught off guard by multiple defenders who are just a little bit greedy. They got their jowls salivating and they're always hungry for kills. At the very least, that's the way that I experienced that particular round, with Delta Badhand basically succumbing to Murphy's Law. Let's put it that way. Still, though, onwards and upwards we must go. So Team Alpha, now that they have taken that top floor straight off of the playing field, they can now move over towards the basement. But they do have some very, very minor changes in the lineup. No more Mute is present. Instead, we are going to be taking up the reins of that Wamai. So the Fable dynamic duo, the catchers of Jaeger and Wamai, are going to make this overall nade play, from which DBH have brought out 4 HEs in total. It's going to make that really, really tough to actually, at the very least, bear some fruit for the attackers.
Yeah, I mean, again, this clash will be brought. We'll try and slow them down. It's going to be really fun to see. I mean, one thing I do love is seeing the pairing of this clash with the Thunderbird. I think it's something I really love to see, and I'm gonna keep it real. The most fun I've had recently in Siege was Clash, Thunderbird, Rook, and Doc. You play that, and as a Clash man, it's so much fun just never dying. Thunderbird can stimulate that, you know, you can keep yourself a little bit alive, although looks like we might see some aggressive gunplays with that SPSMG9. Still, holstering downstairs, they're not extending themselves into bunker. And I think this just means that they want to play that little bit slower. There's no wall denial. They haven't brought the ace, the mute, they haven't brought the bandit. Which does mean that when this control is taken by the attack, they will be able to open up into sight very efficiently, very quickly, and without any sort of backlash coming at their direction. And there's no one currently playing in this pillar position. James has spotted that out on a drone. If they move quickly, Hibana might be able to get into a comfortable position here, as Mr. Joe is trying to fight off at the approach of Lion from the other side of the map.
So, first EU1D comes on over, but still it works to the effect of Team Alpha, as Reich will be able to draw first blood onto Dingley. And despite the fact that Team Alpha didn't bring any kind of hard breach utility on the playing field, that is no longer a headache nor a concern for them, as the one and only hard breacher that DBH have brought on out, the Hibana, has now fallen. No can openers or trampolines in sight either, so DBH, utility quite barren in terms of hard breach potential. They now have to do it the old-fashioned way, and Reich is willing to meet them on that exact same front. Picks up a double onto Vulcanoid, and Atlantic, currently sat over by Pillar, is willing to put that MX4 Storm to good use. Lets the Blackbeard of Malu slip by ever so slightly, and Reich, he is still on the loose. At the very, very tippy-top tower, he will reside, as I believe Vulcanoid may have caught his scent, or at the very least that should have been upstairs. Malu trades one back, as Atlantic will be able to find one. Malu now falls, and Reich elsewhere on the map will be able to claim a melee kill. So, in the blink of an eye, you could have missed that entire round. Luckily, you didn't. We are just witnessing nothing but utter domination on the side of Team Alpha, really proving to us exactly why they are on second place and why they deserve that pole position.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a couple interesting rounds. I'm not quite sure how Reich was able to find that kill onto Dingley, because that was the thing that kind of turned this whole round around. You know, you have that Hibana, you have that access, and this peak from the staircase as you're trying to enter into bunker completely shut it down before it could begin. I mean, I'm not quite sure why that wasn't located or how that swing was able to go. But that's neither here nor there. When they didn't get that open, when they lost their Habana, they weren't able to make the adjustment that they needed to still take efficient map control, because you don't need to get that breach on opened up. A lot of teams will win rounds of attacking basement without doing so. Delta Bad Hand seemed like they were so stuck in their idea of that being their game plan that when it fell apart, they just started running into the defense. I mean, you saw it was Atlantic on the alibi playing on that pillar, just picking them up as they tried to push on in.
Yeah, and that's usually something that is not exactly all too difficult to try to dislodge some player from inside of pillar. I mean, at the very least, they had one of two prongs to actually come up with successful crossfire. They had players inside a bunker, which was good. The idea is there, but obviously they were missing a second portion to that. We didn't have any kind of stage presence at the back stairs. Reason why is because they never bothered to actually clear out Reich. And if you want to clear out Reich, then I'm not even kidding. Jump into a time capsule, go back probably about 4 years to when pre-rework Oregon was still in the map pool, and just do what any T1 team did back there. Send a couple of people on Repel over towards T3 and clear it out from top to bottom. It is probably even... It sounds just about as easy as I'm saying it right over here. If you want to clear out tower effectively, don't necessarily go directly in through boxes or through the lower side of stage. Go from top to bottom, because guess what? Time permits it. Delta Bad Hand, there is no reason for them to rush things, but when they have been rushing things in these 2 rounds that we have witnessed thus far, guess what? Team Alpha are there to meet them in every single facet. So slow it down just a little bit, play it a little bit more methodically, and I think DBH could snag themselves a couple of rounds here.
Yeah, I think what you're highlighting is critical here. They just need to slow the round down. You're looking at the side of Team Alpha. The reason why they're such a scary team to come up against is because of how flexible they are with how many strong gunners they have available. Right, obviously, Aztec, Atlantic, Trexnote, all these players can frag you out in any position. And
they can do it on their lonesome. They don't need anyone to back them up either.
Exactly. You just need to be more careful. When they are isolating themselves, that's when you can start to put the pressure on. That's when you can take them out of their comfort zone and pick up those kills instead. I'm still intrigued by this recurring Blackbeard pick now, the second round in a row that we're seeing it. And whilst I would normally like seeing some less frequent operators, I think Amaru has very interesting options, especially on a map like Oregon. Knock has those frag grenades, has that information denial of sorts, being able to cloak yourself from the cameras. It's all very interesting. Blackbeard, though, I'm gonna keep it real. I think Blackbeard is a subpar operator at the moment with his current state. He's been a nightmare to deal with in past patches, but just the way the game works at the moment, it's a little bit faster than it used to be. You need to be able to have some form of utility to assist your team with, and he has those flashbangs, but it's the breaching charges that were being brought in the last round. And his face shield is not the terror that it used to be.
It simply isn't. It no longer has 800 HP. Had to add an extra 0 over there, just like back in the day during Dustline. I do remember, like, Blackbeard was one of the first seasonal operators that I ever picked up back in the day, and I was just farming Elo way back then during Skull Rain and Dustline. I had a really, really good time, but times changed, of course. And one thing that I'm going to be super duper nitpicky about, obviously, bringing out those breaching rounds, or breaching charges, I should say, not really A+. And you did see that on the side of Team Alpha, they were rocking the dual capture lineup of Jaeger as well as Umai. Bring out your flashbangs, burn out that utility, and then maybe you give your fraggers a little bit of leeway to toss out HEs. Obviously, usage of utility is something that really, really needs a surge on the side of DBH, because they haven't really been finding themselves in a position that permits utility usage to actually bump up your fragging potential. So obviously there are still a couple of sort of boxes in the checklist that they got to tick off. And I really, really do hope that for their own sake they will be able to actually bring a little bit more cohesion to these attacking rounds. Still though, Tertiary Bomb Site is currently on the docket right here, and everyone outside of Team Alpha, it is playing shotgun galore right now.
Yeah, I was going to highlight earlier that you see Mr. Joe with the Super Shorty, and as a fellow Clash enjoyer, that Super Shorty is so fun to use on Clash. It's just an absolute laugh. I mean, it is terrible. Don't get me wrong. The Super Shorty does 0 damage. The amount of times you will stand at point-blank range and shoot someone in the torso, and they will just stand there like nothing has happened.
Yeah.
Pains me.
Yeah.
But this is very amusing to see them running the 5 shotguns. Shotgun Team 6. And, I mean, whether it works out for them, we'll have to wait and see. This is probably the longest site on the map. This is probably the site which is hardest to pull off a shotgun only. There's not many tight corners inside of the site, but it looks like the approach that Delta Bad are going for here on this rear stairs might be able to kind of work around this a little bit more. You're playing in these long corridors, you're looking at the kitchen corridor, you have to be very careful of these angles around box and security because that's when they're going to come back to bite you. Still, this Blackbeard taking up point, going to be making themselves the entry approach. As, well, this shield might help you save from a shotgun blast, because it doesn't really matter how much damage you take, it will just block it. So actually, maybe the Blackbeard is going to be useful here.
It could certainly be useful. Obviously, against shotguns, it's one thing because a buckshot will spread across your entire torso and not just towards your melon. So we'll see exactly how wise Mally is with the engagements that he chooses to challenge. Still, though, on the side of Team Alpha, they're doing nothing but existing. And existence is pressure at the end of the day that DBH at one certain point will have to acknowledge. We do see them take control of meeting at the very darn least, but still information is quite lackluster as we have plenty of roamers out and about. I do think that DBH are purposely choosing to ignore the roaming presence, as we can already see. James is going to be able to get one of those exothermic charges off, so at the very least an avenue has been created directly into the bomb site, but clearing out Reich with the M870 is going to be a tough nut to crack at the very least. I do see a couple of flashbangs, so they could potentially full flash him and go for a swing. And speaking of which, Mr. Joe believed in that super shorty and vice versa. He finds the opening frag as Aztec is trying to duel things out with the Deagle. Unsuccessful, but guess what? Reich is simply better. Finds a two-piece as Atlantic joins in on the fun, and now it's all down to Dingley. Type 89 to boots, and he will find just one measly little kill onto Trexno before Reich with the M870 and P12 comes in for a swinging triple kill, and that is a hat trick of rounds unanswered for Team Alpha.
And we also just not trying to sow any more dissent into the ranks of Delta Bad, but we may have just witnessed a flanking clash kill with the super shorty.
Maybe.
Each part of that gets a little bit more uncomfortable to hear. And that shouldn't happen.
Nope.
But, I mean, sometimes things don't quite work out the way you want to. The Monty here looks like it's going to be 6 to pick off, and that's going to be onto the Capital, trying to bring more tools to deal with this clash, which they haven't been able to answer so far. Clash has 1 death, which was a team kill, when they were already in a 1 versus 5. I don't think that really counts as an attempt from the side of Delta Bad hand to make that work, and I think we're going to be seeing another set of shotguns coming out here. This time, though, with the Boss G.
I love the Boss G. Easily one of my favorite guns in the entire game. I hope that Trexno is rocking the iron sights, because if he isn't, then he's doing a disservice to the Boss G enthusiast community.
Yeah, it was
That is
so
just a
funny.
fact.
It was so funny during the original. What was the event called? The showdown event.
Yeah, the showdown event.
And
that was bombing. That was so much fun.
It was
And he was trying to relive
event.
the glory days.
But it's just like when that was when like people realized how bad the Boss G iron sights is, because I'd never seen it before playing that event, because obviously I'm not going to use the iron sights in it. And it's just like it blew my mind how hard it was to use that weapon, and that was when the revolver was still like an absolute monster of a gun. So you could just go hand with the revolver, and no one used the Boss G.
But now, Trexno, he is looking to cause a little bit of chaos. Atlantic, I don't know what he's up to right over here. Playing close proximity with a shoddy, as per usual, inside a master bedroom is going to be relatively difficult for DBH to try to dislodge. Look how spread out everybody on the side of Team Alpha is. At this certain point, they are willing, and no, actually, they are inviting DBH, not only into the bomb site, but to maybe force out a couple of isolated 1v1s, and that is something that, if you're in the shoes of DBH, really can't afford to try to compromise. Team Alpha will snag up those 1v1s any single day of the week. At the very least right now, they have made a couple of strides down below inside a garage as well as armory, but there is going to be some resistance met as Trexno is able to find Malu in the Boss G. It comes alive. One Brazilian operator now down for the count, and DBH distinctly onto the man advantage. Maybe they will be able to convert, but at this certain point, I think it would take a miracle for them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this Mutant Atlantic is in a difficult position where if they can spy him out, they can try and pinch him out. But this drone duo downstairs of the Vigil and the Valkyrie is going to cause problems. A lovely shot from Razor. That's going to take down Trexno. The Boss G 1v1 goes in the hands of the Dokkaebi. And that's the numbers advantage brought back to parity, and the attack, with how spread out this defense are, include
Oh my!
Forget what I was saying. What?
Mr. Joe is just gaming right now. And there's no other way that I can put it. That Super Shorty coming alive has already been able to find 2 players from a lowly little clash. And he turtles up, but no! His feetsies were just a little bit too exposed. Dingley will capitalize onto him as the next EU1D comes on out. And we now find ourselves in a proper 3v3 showdown. Still though, Delta Bad Hand, distinct disadvantage. Naturally, they're rocking ARs as opposed to the shotties of Team Alpha, but Vulcanoid puts that Vector AR to good use. He finds Atlantic and converts it into a 3v2 situation. We've got a little bit of site control to work with right now on the offensive side, and James is taking a boatload of damage from down below. Still, though, Reich is isolated away from the action, and Aztec down below has been fully compromised. Dingley will have to go inside to get that diffuser down, but no! He'll be caught on out mid-repel like a clay pigeon, and diffuser will be picked back on up by James, and he needs to stick it probably as soon as humanly possible right over here. But this is still going to be tricky for Delta Bad Hand to pull on off. Aztec is looking for one angle to work with. All he needs is a couple of shots, but he can't make it work. Vulcanoid will shut down Reich, and now it's all down to Aztec to mount up this retake. Clock has already been reset, and he's got the Deagle to boot. He will be left on minimal HP, courtesy of Vulcanoid, and he comes in for the sweep up. DBH finally get themselves around on the board, and it came a little bit too close for comfort.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate there that he was trying to spray through the floor with the Deagle. If he'd gone with the shotgun, might have been able to land some connections onto that Ash. A really nice pickup to take down that Habano as they were trying to swing on into sight. But ultimately, they couldn't make the round work. And Delta Bad Hand claiming an important round here because they need to start putting numbers on the board. And, I mean, a lot of it just came to these 1v1s that usually you would feel very comfortable that players such as Reich, such as Aztec, would be able to take. When you have a shotgun in hand, it's not quite as easy.
Nope.
Down to the basement once again, however. This is a somewhat return to a previous and similar lineup. Still rocking that Vigil. Maybe with the Boss G still, trying to get some action in.
Hopefully.
It is in fact still with the Boss G. They are in fact still running primarily shotguns. Obviously, Aztec on that Wamai. Wamai doesn't have a shotgun available, so we'll have to see how he joins the meme patrol. But for the most part, this is going to be a very standard setup. They're going to play that the shield on Pixel from on Pillar from the Alibi, and actually this is where that ACS 12 can be very strong. We saw, I believe it was Joystick on Team Empire. He would used to run this. You know, he'd play himself inside a site with the Maestro back in the day. This was before Alibi had a share of the 2x kind of craze. And now, involved in that, it gives you that access to challenge these long angles with that slug shotgun. And it's a very interesting way of trying to take these gunfights on. You have a real good chance at dealing some damage over range, especially with the scope.
Exactly, and obviously a couple of patches ago, the ACS 12, specifically on Alibi, didn't have access to that 2.0 scope, as you stated, only the 1.5. Luckily, that change was made, so it is a little bit more viable, and sticking it on a 3-speed operator, oof, that is just a package that you do not want to trifle with. Still, though, on the side of DBH, they managed to get themselves around on the board. Now, hopefully, with the last 2 ones left out in this first half, they might be able to claw it back into a 3-3 split. But obviously, it's going to take just a little bit more cohesion for them to accomplish that. At the very least, though, we do see Reich get droned out at the top of tower, and he will have to force himself out in towards Attic. No swing or repel incoming in thus far. He will, at the very least, try to bait out a couple of players, and in close proximity, he's able to shut down Malu. He looks for a second, and that's already a 2-piece bagged for Reich. He sets himself up to 8 frags thus far, a perfect KD of 2-0 on average thus far, but he will be shut down by Vulcanoid, so at the very least, they are able to leash the one and only roamer on the side of Team Alpha. But guess what? There is another nasty surprise that they have to deal with. I believe that was the side of either Aztec or Atlantic in the top of Garage that they might not be able to tame just yet. Mr. Joe starting to feel up the heat just a little bit. Will start to receive some pressure as Vulcanoid is still on the hunt up above for any of those pesky lurkers.
Yeah, now this is where they're going to bunker down inside of that site. You can see all 4 of them returning here and just playing to slow down the attack. Half the round is gone now. They don't have the smoke. to try and sort out time. They don't have any nurture cells either. So when this plant does come in, if they get that control as they attack, they do have a real good chance of getting this to stick. But for now, it's going to be challenging these angles. The frag grenade coming in going to force back Aztec on that Umai. So this is going to come out. Oh, a minute left, and they can't seem to budge Mr. Joe on this clash.
Nope. I mean, at the very least, try to get up close and personal. You know, melee hits can actually stagger that shield, but still, though, with the amount of backup that Mr. Joe has from both pillar inside and inside of the site itself, it is going to be difficult to find some kind of opening. But with Aztec maybe dancing with the devil as he is going for a couple of chicken peeks, they might be able to catch him lacking at a certain point. Still, though, 35 seconds left to go for DBH, and they really have to start kicking up the pace. Super Shorty turned on out, but James will fully capitalize. He finds 2 for the bag as Aztec will retaliate with one of his own. Trexno joins in for one of his own. James, left on minimal HP, is about to go down at the hands of that revolver, but Aztec needs to stick to reload. In close proximity, Aztec still takes the gunfight all to himself, and Team Alpha, they get themselves a 4th round thus far. DBH, regardless as to what weapon disadvantage they may be going up against, they are having a rough time on the struggle bus right now.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, man. They just didn't have sort of any other approach to this site. There's no Cade. You have the kind of upstairs control. We saw, I forget who it was exactly, but we saw one player upstairs in rear stage by meeting, and there's all 4 defenders in sight. You can have that Habana rotate around, open up box, that forces that Wamai out of that position. He can no longer hold off the clash, and you can challenge him on the back of pillar. See, these are the kind of things that just, we're not seeing Delta Badhand have enough flexibility to change up on the fly how they're going to go when they start to lose members, when they run into a roadblock. And they're losing so much time. It was a minute 20 that they were just stood outside of Bunker 4, just staring at Mr. Joe on that clash. No frag grenades left to make a move on him. No real stun. I mean, they tried to stun him out, but again, that isn't going to do the job.
Nope.
They need to just try and find this flexibility, have a bit more creativity in how they want to attack to be able to take some control of this match.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get creative in terms of actually dealing with the clash and you like sitting around and probably not doing a whole lot until the defense gives you an opportunity, I would say bring a Kali. Kali sniper rifle shots, they can disorient that clash. Force that shield to be staggered, and then you can capitalize if you really want to take a slow approach towards dealing with some of these oppressive operators. I don't know. Obviously, Siege has so many different options to work with. DBH, just a little bit of creativity, because at the end of the day, imagination is probably the only thing that can stand between failure and success in this game. The more creative you get, the more unexpected your playstyle will be in Team Alpha. They may be able to actually lose out a couple of rounds. Still, though, we must carry onwards and upwards. Into the final round of the first half we go. Malu already taking control of that top side. T3 now firmly sat with the attackers, and we do have a couple of can openers already in place, so we can get attic open at a certain point. But still, though, dealing with Trexno down below inside a garage, yet to be droned out, and I believe they've caught onto his scent, as the ERC wasn't exactly active, so he will be forced back up towards Armory Stairs momentarily. Still, though, no contact made for either squad in this round.
Yeah, I mean, they've got that attic opened up now, which is a great start for them. With only a minute gone, they have some control early on. But now it's going to be a case of how can they transition this into pressure on site. They're going to have to try and make their way up Armory Staircase, which you can see the Capital taking point on to kind of clear Armory. There's no one in there at the moment, but he doesn't know that for sure. He has to check it. Base checking, but Trexno now walking in. The timing on this is a little bit crazy as he's swinging in. The shot's not coming out from the power in time. The one tap from the Boss G. He's now looking for a second.
Man, Trexno is willing to lock horns with any poor soul that dares walk into his crosshairs. He will fully capitalize as he is hungry for a little bit more, takes a bit of chip damage, but is still willing to die on this hill no matter the cost. Mally, though, will be able to waltz on into Armory, and Supernova in tow means that he could be able to shut down a low HP Trexno as he goes full solid snake mode. Creeping and crawling his way on in, he will lie in wait for, well, any poor soul to walk into his LOS. And he spots out the laser sight. I believe we are just inches away from Trexno maybe being able to find himself a double kill, but we are also just a single minute away from Team Alpha being able to get themselves their 5th round if DBH don't make their next move.
Yeah, they're stalling out a lot of time here. Trexno is the only member who's had a trophy. They do have to worry about this breach from main, though. They've opened it up, the defense themselves. They have this clash watching through, waiting for their run. But there we go. James able to pick up Trexner. He exposed himself to the back. And now they're going to start to try and flood into this site. They have the shotgun at the ready with that Supernova. But more importantly, these ARs to try and cut off these long angles when they try to stick down that plant. Going to have to deal with this clash, though. Is it still up and still causing problems? A lot of damage there onto it. And, well, Volcanoid, she's able to find Aztec on the backside of things, and this forces Mr. Joe on that clash out, back onto White Stairs. This is the opening that they've been looking for. They've got to be careful of the swing!
Oh! And there it is. Reich finds a second. He's able to get the EV Injure onto Dingley as well. Whips out the pistol for number 3! And Atlantic gets himself a dignity frag in that round as well. When it came to the other collapse on the side of DBH, they had all of the pieces already set to complete the puzzle. But Reich, he did what little toddlers do best, and that is flipping over the table and just ruining DBH's day. That M870 paired together with the turn on of the P12 towards someone rappelling into kids' dorms. My oh my. That is probably the most clip-worthy thing I have seen in quite some time here in Bull.
Yeah, that was an impressive feat from the Jaeger. I mean, Reich shown its excellence with that M870. M870 has always been known to be a pretty good shotgun. No, it's always been very effective. It's just, you know, why take it over the MP7? Why take it over that 416's carbine? Well, that's why. When you're running all shotguns, you have to. But now we're seeing this change up as the sides swap over. 5-1 in the first half for Team Alpha. That's a dominant half, despite some interesting loadout options, shall we say.
Yeah, sure.
But now we're seeing this Kali come up from Mr. Joe. And this is the talk that you said. You said specifically Kali is great for dealing with this clash. It will stagger that shield. It gives you that opening that you want.
Yeah.
And they're bringing a Montaigne of their own. Obviously, Clash is a counter to the Montaigne. When you're zapping him, his shield will buckle just that little bit. It gives you that opening onto his left foot. But this is the change-up that they need. They have a plan to deal with this clash, and with the opening that you provided by getting rid of that, you can start to make your move into sight. I'm expecting to see a very well-coordinated assault. They've got the hard breach charges on that Montaigne. They've got the Habana to get open this breach, and when they're looking at execute, they've got the Ying, they've got the Candelas, they've got the Smokes. It's a very well-rounded lineup, despite having some pretty unique operators.
It is definitely, as you said, really well-rounded, quite versatile on the side of Team Alpha, and this is usually the way that I personally like to experience Siege. Just swing as far away from the meta as possible usually provides the most entertaining stuff to boot. Still though, Aztec already being just super duper oppressive, and he will lock horns with his favored clash on the opposing end of that Hunter's Lodge hallway. And as you said, left foot a little bit exposed, but nobody on the side of DBH is actually in the prime position to capitalize. But no! Reich actually goes in for a wide swing, and he will be left in the DB-no status. Can be picked up back to 20 HP, and Maui will continue to lock down this fort as the C4 is tossed out. I can only assume from inside of Attic and does minimal damage, as Trexno will finally be able to draw first blood onto James. The Valkyrie now down for the count, and that is the man advantage on the side of Team Alpha, or so I thought. Reich, a little bit of an oopsie daisies over there, and he will take his teammate Atlantic down 6 feet under with him. Sag.
Yeah, now trying to find a peek onto this clash, getting these melees off, but good spacing from Malu to just not take any damage on the shield, not to get caught out by that. Ooh, saving his teammate as well in the background. Jaeger nearly getting caught out by Trexno, but it looks like they're holding on for now. Aztec relaying information to his team, but there's not much he can do as, well, a lot of damage now dealt onto this clash. Finally, though, Volcanoid on this flank, she's able to pick up Aztec, and the Monty now has to be careful. He's next on the docket. As well, Dingley finds out Trexno as well. That's the Habana gone from the breach, and Mr. Joe stuck outside big window, all by his lonesome. 4 to find. I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon.
Nope, I mean, probably channel in your inner simple and try to get something done. We might be able to see that sniper rifle be put to use, but as I say that, he is left with minimal HP, taking a couple of shots in from Attic. This is basically a foregone conclusion that Volcanoid will be able to pick up the frag onto Mr. Joe. And hey, at the very least, we've gotten ourselves a heartbeat, a sign of life on the side of DBH, and especially when they put their thoughts to the test, they can rise ahead of the curve, and they can pick up rounds successfully. Still, though, whether or not they're going to be able to pick up the next 3 rounds at the very darn least to be able to tie up the score line remains unknown. Still, though, things could have gone so much differently if we didn't see that TK and suicide with the frag grenade, courtesy of Reich early into the round. That definitely shifted the tide. That is one thing that I can say for darn sure. If it didn't play out that way, in an alternate reality, Team Alpha could have already been sat on match point. But at the very least, Delta Bad Hand, they will remain in contention, and they will keep things as competitive as possible as we move into round number 8. Getting that victory on the top floor does prompt a move all the way down to the basement, where they will be locked in playing a couple of video games as per usual.
Yeah, I mean, this basement hold now, this is something that you want to be able to take. Again, no denial being brought from the side of this defense. Mute and Bandit, again, are available, but these teams are focusing on other forms of utility to try and slow down their opponents, namely with those Banshees and those Goon Mines from the Melusi and Legion respectively, aiming to try and just slow down the approach before they get to these walls. They have the openings made on E-Box, and they have this clash. You can relay the information to them. It's going to be about trying to find these early peaks and try and get a little bit aggressive onto the side of Team Alpha to try and halt them back before they can really get any momentum going. We'll have to see how that plays out for them in practice. Because so far, every time we've seen these teams take aggressive gunfights at each other, well, Team Alpha have always had the upper hand.
I think they might have the upper hand here as well. At the very least, the element of surprise as we have a full stack over towards Bunker. At the very least, they won't really move a muscle just yet. They will let some initial drone work get a little bit of the job done thus far, so they know exactly what they're going up against. One Finka boost already expended, and now the Team Alpha have recognized the fact that Mali is down below inside a bunker. They have to respect that. So they're going to be at the very least shifting gears by sending over Atlantic as well as this, the likes of Aztec, at the very least over towards the garage, but they're actually going to full charge Mali instead. A little bit of nade damage is good for, at the very least, setting Mali down to 50 HP, and now he's got some contention to deal with. Still, he can keep these attackers at bay as Reich has got that sausage prepped and ready to go. He's going to try to shut down Mali to the best of his abilities, but James will be able to draw first blood. C4 tossed on out, good for the second, as James is now on a double kill, and he can get a little bit more aggressive over towards this rotation, or this breach, I should call it. MP, well, forgot the name of the weapon. I'm blanking out. MPX right over there. Not good for one. As Trexno actually vaults on in, he gets the upper hand and shuts down one player over towards laundry machines, but Mali is right over there to take up the reins. We will have him pick up that trade, and that is going to relegate Team Alpha to just 2 sole survivors, Reich and Atlantic. What can they accomplish? Probably not a whole lot in this scenario, as Diffuser is deep inside of enemy territory.
Yeah, it all kind of fell apart here when they couldn't move that Clash out of that position, but now Clash trying to move through these rotations holes. They're not quite made to adjust for that shield, which is unfortunate because you always want to make sure they've got the impact grenade in hand, could always make that available to themselves, but instead choosing just for the time being to stand inside this way, try and slow down any form of rotation through here as, well, Reich is waiting for this barrels play to come through, waiting for something to happen, waiting for an opponent to push into him. He's got that sausage close on the angle. But this defense, Delta Bad, they're playing very well here, just playing patiently, waiting out the timer, because it's on their side. They don't have to rush, they don't have to make a move unwanted, and this is going to force the attack, the 2 remaining attackers, into uncomfortable positions.
It certainly is. And especially with the sausage, while I love it as a weapon, it is one of the greatest known to mankind, not exactly primed for long-range engagements. And as I say that, the T5 SMG of Dingley will come alive, and it will be able to shut down the last 2 players, essentially getting the ball rolling for Delta Bad Hand as they're able to get themselves a 3rd round, narrowing the gap down to 2 after a botched attempt to claim control of that bunker side. Obviously, that clash proved to be very, very oppressive and just a little bit too difficult for Team Alpha to deal with. They had the right tools for the job, but they really couldn't close the gap towards that clash and actually set her 6 feet under. We saw good usage of overall grenades and HEs being tossed out to set that clash to minimal HP, but they couldn't really, as I said, get the job done in that scenario. Still though, we will move onwards and upwards to the first tertiary bomb site that Delta Bad Hand get to visit this time around. And we just see a fuse being stuck by Aztec. And he better be rocking the riot shield, otherwise I'm gonna riot alongside Twitch chat.
I still remember this was my gold elo abusing strategy. Another one that you're gonna get a little gem of is you ran the shield with the PMM, because the PMM didn't get the same like hipfire change that Monty and Blitz's pistols did, and oh my god, was it abusive as hell. It looked very wide, but somehow just always hit shots.
Yeah,
it
is
just wouldn't
something.
miss.
It never missed. It was just that good of a gun. And also, a little bit of a throwback for those of you guys that actually used to watch a lot of Pro League back in the day, when Border was still in the comp map pool. It was common practice for LATAM teams, the likes of Liquid as well as FaZe, would frequently rock Fuse with the PMM and just simply barge into Armory over by half wall on Border. It was oppressive as hell, and I'm really hoping that Aztec is at the very least going to try to get me more nostalgic, but I've yet to see exactly what primary he has pulled on nowadays. A lot of members on the side of Team Alpha are just gathering a little bit of info, and yeah, okay, I'm upset. Aztec, you've got the AK-12 in your arms. This is not how we do things here at Bool.
Yeah, the difficulty is riot shields into Clash are not fun. The moment you get tased, they go right out the way. The only reason Monty kind of works is because you only expose your leg. But it's the equivalent of having a melee attack dealt onto you, which is never fun to be on the receiving end of. It always sucks when that happens, and so that's an understandable reason to try and avoid it here. But this Clash, feeding information to the rest of the team, while they're trying to clear out this small tower, they have to try and find these breaches opening. I mean, you've got the Hibana to be able to get some work done on this main breach. Once you remove these bandit batteries, you can start to expose these long angles.
Yeah. At the very least, we do have Mr. Joe inside a small tower, and with that breaching round from above, he will be able to, well, I was going to say lose his life, but that was actually Reich who lost his. Good C4 on the side of James right over here to kick off round number 9, and it will be immediately exchanged as Vulcanoid is the next to fall. Still, though, bandit batteries have been taken care of, so Trexno's life has been made a little bit easier in those X-Coward pellets. They can be sent directly over towards the dining wall. We will finally see a little bit of progression being made by Team Alpha as they are looking to maybe challenge Showers, to which I think Dingley, or at the very least Ree, is currently sat in. We will see that breach opened on up as Mr. Joe, the tip of the spear, is willing to lead the charge. Spots out a couple pixels of somebody's back, but he won't be able to capitalize, as that is the Clash. Still, though, wide swing comes out from James. It will be traded on out by Atlantic. Back in the 3v3 situation we sit. Showers firmly into control as Ree is willing to die on this hill with the MP7, but Mr. Joe was able to slip past ever so slightly. Still, though, no contact made in this 3v3 situation as 45 seconds remain for Team Alpha to maybe win out the round. Wide swing is good. Ree finds another onto Mr. Joe. Is down to Atlantic and Aztec to see if they can make the best out of a bad situation.
Oh, wonderful play by Reset to drop Atlantic as well. And now it's effectively the 1 versus 3 as well. Atlantic will fall as well. And, well, everyone just can't quite get the rounds together here on the attacking side of things. That's a clean sweep from Delta Bad Hand to return that to form that they needed. And it makes it 4 in a row as well, which is a wonderful way to start off the half swan.
It certainly is, and hopefully on the side of Delta Bad Hand, well, at the very least, they've been able to build up so much momentum on this defensive side. It might just have to do with the fact that inherently Oregon has and probably will always be a defensive-sided map, and they're just willing to fully milk out all of that. All that value that Oregon has to offer. Thus far, both squads have been able to pick up successful site rotations, a hat-trick of rounds in response from Delta Bad Hand. As you said, is setting them up brilliantly for success thus far. They have narrowed the gap down to just 1 round, and they will likely return to the top floor, as why on earth would you go to meeting and kitchen this time around? No reason to see if they can maybe tie up the scoreline in a blood-soaked bow. And it's starting to look really realistic because both squads have struggled quite a bit on the offense. Not exactly sure what can be done differently from Team Alpha, but keep in mind, they still have a buffer of that 1 round to work with. A single round under the belt of Team Alpha sets them on match point, 1 round away from closing this off and bagging yet another 3 points. Something that DBH wants to try to overcome. They want to obviously throw a spanner into the works and try to disrupt the agenda of Team Alpha as much as possible. So 2 more rounds for DBH to hit match point, a 3rd for the W.
Yeah, obviously with Delta Bad Hand being down on only 2 points, there's no chance that they're going to reach that upper bracket. So they are locked into the lower bracket. For this playoffs run, it doesn't really matter to them. It's just about getting their foothold as a team, throwing a spanner in the works for Team Alpha, playing a little bit of Kingmaker towards the top of that leaderboard. Because, well, this is Alphas. They need to win both their games if they want to have a chance at reaching that number 1 seed. And, you know, so far, Delta Bad Hand, while having a slow start, are now really coming back to bite. You looked at that second round, I think that was a round that was very winnable for Team Alpha. You know, they reinforced off as the defensive side all of Bunker. There was no angles opened up by them to try and contest in to support this clash, and yet they couldn't really find it. This time around, you're taking a site which has a lot more natural lines of sight that the attackers can take advantage of. A couple windows, as well as these breaches, eventually when you get attic control as well, are really going to help you in achieving your goals here. Maybe this will be the mark that they need to shut this clash down, but it didn't work before when they attacked it. They had the Monty, they had their own Harley, but they couldn't quite make anything work.
No.
I'm not quite sure what exactly needs to change for them to be able to bring that through this time. As well, they've got the Nomad, but they're looking at relying on frag grenades for the most part.
Yeah, and that isn't something that is all too out of place. Obviously, throwing in frag grenades, there is one thing that is seriously wrong with both of these two squads, is that they aren't necessarily stacking their HEs, they are throwing them one by one.
Yeah.
If you want to get rid of Malu on the Clash, just maybe try to think a little bit more as if you were playing Counter-Strike and have two players set up with HEs that can simultaneously throw out their grenades and then deal near lethal damage, if not lethal itself damage, to that Clash, outright dealing with them. It is a possibility, it is something to think about. Obviously, it's nowhere near as easy to pull off a double grenade stack in Siege than it is in other video games, but it is something worth considering. Still, though, we have yet to actually see Reich really come alive in this second half. The only impact that he made was killing himself, as well as getting a TK in that round number 7 at the very start of the half. He has yet to pick up a frag since, I believe, as he has been rocking those 10 kills to his name at the very start of the side swap as well. So hopefully he'll be able to come alive and actually maybe lead Team Alpha to victory. Control of Master Bedroom has been established. The same thing can be said for Hunter's Lodge in just a hot second, as Malu will be droned on out, whips out the SPS MG, but isn't willing to trifle with it. Main breach has been opened up into Games Room, so at the very least Team Alpha have an established foothold to work with.
Yeah, and this is really important for them if they want to start dealing with this clash, or to start getting themselves into sight, is opening up these angles and giving themselves some options. And interestingly placed air jab should be able to get anyone coming on a flank, but it could be exposed to a deep angle if they walk at the back of the staircase. They'll have to hope for their sake that there's no one on the flank, as Dingley's the only one really downstairs in the position who could, but there's still enough time if he chooses to go for that approach. For the meantime, though, this attack has been stalled out just that little bit. Clash watching towards Attic with the Valkyrie of James playing quite aggressively on this fridge. If they want to try and push through, they have to be very careful of the angle that he's going to be holding against them, as this wall is about to drop down. But still, 50 seconds left and no kill has come through.
No contact has been made, and this wall is getting opened up very, very late. I don't think that there's any kind of aid. There is no catching utility in place to keep James alive, except for a Banshee, which only slows things down, and he will actually have to forfeit this portion of the map. So that has already been claimed by Team Alpha, but he's still willing to contest. Frag grenades start raining on in, but they deal minimal damage to James, so much so that he can continue to fight on his own terms, basically. But the first finger boost will be popped on out. Ree is the next to fall, left in the DBNO status, and he cannot be picked on up. Reich goes massive as he waltzes in to Attic and finds himself with a double kill. Dingley, though, will clap back as he is holding down the fort. The revive comes on through, and Vulcanoid will trigger that air jab. Still, though, as we hit 000, we will see Mr. Joe be able to stick that defuse plant, and Reich is actually providing perfect coverage. Will be able to get himself, if I'm not mistaken, a quadra kill, including that initial TK that we saw pop up in the feed. Reich has finally come alive. The one wish that I had at the very, very start of the round has come true, and that is going to put Team Alpha on a very comfortable match point.
Yeah, and he's highlighting to us that there's in fact the third TK of the game, and you know it's questionable, but sometimes that happens, and they're going to be pushing themselves to match point, like you said. That was a very questionable I don't quite know how they managed to pull that one off. 19 seconds left. They're walking in a 5v5. Reich taking the round into his own hands, like you said, picking up those kills. Before then, it wasn't a confident round from Team Alpha, and Delta Badhand, while losing it out, you gotta feel like if they just had some form of attention on that trophy doorway, they could have been able to shut that down as they tried to enter on in.
Yeah,
it might come back to bite them.
They did have a little bit of attention, and that was the fact that Malu was actually rock hard on that position for the vast majority of the round, and then out of nowhere, he just kind of disappeared and went to go and assist James inside of Attic. Maybe James felt a little bit too uncomfortable trying to hold down that ground all by himself. But the fact that Malu had actually left from his station, left from his post, that was like the prime opportunity for Team Alpha to strike him where it hurts most.
Yeah, exactly. The moment you see that clash rotate away, you know you're safe to play. And, well, they did the best that they could in that situation, winning out the round. Now they have to attack this basement. And what really stopped them before was that they couldn't push Malu on this clash out of this bunker, the barrel's doorway. There were no angles to support this clash, and yet they still couldn't quite land it. Maybe that double frag grenade, like you mentioned before, would be all that they need. Maybe just get a little bit more close and personal. But this time, it looks like half of that E-box wall has been left soft, which means that when they start to push on in, they could get caught out by some sprays through this wall from any lurking teammates of the defensive clash.
Definitely a possibility. Still, though, at the very least, Team Alpha know what their goals are and where their priorities reside in this particular round. We do have Dingley once again on the loose, as per usual. He has been able to cause a little bit of chaos in some of the earlier rounds, but he's going to need to cause so much more right here if he's willing to keep Delta Badhand in the running over here for maybe 3 points. Actually, no, they can't get 3 points anymore. They can only get, at the very least, 1 if they hit 6 rounds over here. A really, really tall task to accomplish, so pack yourself your hiking boots and your sticks because you've got yourself a mountain to climb on this defensive side. Back down to the basement we go, and we do see the top floor of tower already being cleared on out, courtesy of Aztec, so Team Alpha. They are about 80% of the way done with actually clearing out the entirety of the map. That top floor, I do believe I spotted out a little bit of a silhouette up there inside of Armory. I suspect that could be Dingley on the loose again.
Yeah, that would be the expected player here. It was the Clash getting a little bit aggressive on the back staircase, causing some problems for Atlantic, taking a little bit of damage away, but that does mean that they know this Clash is playing on that stage staircase. We'll have some support from our teammates, but it's still, an interesting way to take this aggressively on this defense as well. Like you say, Dingley hiding away on the other side of the map. The attack have to be very careful not to expose themselves to this, as well, they still are yet to find a way into this basement. They haven't quite had that control down into bunker yet. Clash back in that position to deny that. And they're setting themselves up to try and come down laundry stairs. Volcanoid's able to find the first pick as, well, Atlantic going to get injured on out. Trexano shuts down the Vigil though, and that's freezer control starting to be acquired.
And whether or not Team Alpha are going to be able to fully capitalize on the control that they have right now and put it to the best of their use remains yet to be seen. Trexno is going to be able to shut down James. There is still one roamer, one lurker that is just existing and actually applying constant pressure to the side of the attackers. That is Volcanoid up top, and he's going to shift gears and try to redirect his attention down below. At the very least, Malu is able to keep them at bay as Ree is the next to fall. Volcanoid is now going to have to join in on the fun, but Malu can certainly take care of himself. Finds one, but Reich will be there to instantly clap it back. Next Fin Caboose comes on out, so Mr. Joe will be able to stick that rather securely as Volcanoid tiptoes his way back onto the bomb site. There's a nasty crossfire that he has to deal with, and Mr. Joe lying in wait with that bearing 9. We know for a fact that the moment that Volcanoid turns his corner, he is likely to fall. He will have to make the first move as there are 30 seconds left to play, but this is a near impossible situation to win for Volcanoid. We will need to see him turn on those red boxes and maybe flick 2 headshots to make it work, and even then, it is a little bit of a stretch. He will swing onto Mr. Joe, but he can't win out the gunfight. That MP5 doesn't compete with the caliber of the Type 89, and that is Team Alpha getting themselves a W, 7 rounds to 4 on Oregon. It took them a little bit to get the engine revving on the offensive side thus far, but they were able to claw it back. The moment that Reich was activated, that is when Team Alpha could nail the coffin.
Yeah, it was a really nice attempt from the side of Delta Bad Hand to try and hold on to those defensive rounds. They did a great job in that opening rotation at doing it just really well, stalling out time, despite not bringing traditional time stalling kits such as the smoke. A wonderful effort from them to try and bounce back into the game. Unfortunately, they couldn't quite make it stick. As Team Alpha pick up the win 7-4, like you say, on Oregon, and they really came back in the second half, but their defensive rounds were dominant.
They were very dominant. I mean, typically we see 4-2 splits on the defensive side to kick things off. That 5-1 split just goes to show exactly how adamant they can be on their defensive side. And obviously they were also meaning about, let's be entirely fair about it. So you can only start to imagine how good Team Alpha would be on full force on those defensive sides of Oregon. It would be quite something to behold. Still, though, that is unfortunately going to round off everything that we have to offer tonight as well for Playday number 8, I believe. But we obviously do have the conclusion of the group stages tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly run down things as to what we have in stock for you guys tomorrow before we move on to closing thoughts. We will be kicking things off with our opening matchup tomorrow. As you said, Aces versus Alpha, which is going to be the match of the day to see if Alpha can actually one-up Aces and get themselves that pole position, giving them much more favorable seeding moving into LAN. Then we've got CW versus IOM as match number 2, DBH versus Sleepy Gang, and to close things off, we have got Average Players Only going up against the Ludens to round off the final Playday. And the one thing that I do want to say before I hand it off to you to conclude off the live stream is obviously big thank you to everyone that managed to tune in. Both thank you to Dan as well as Pierre, working from behind the curtains to make everything here possible. We love you guys, much love, and that has been it for me. So Golu, do the honors of closing us off, please.
Well, it's been a lovely 2 games that we've witnessed today. Some highlights, some lowlights, some funny moments, and some tragedies. But that'll be it for tonight. Join us for tomorrow, like Tudor's mentioned. You don't want to miss it. And well, from me, it's Golu Molu. Joined by Tudor, and it's been lovely having you on. We'll catch you tomorrow for the last day.
I'm stuck in reverse. I gotta get away now, but I can't seem to take the lead. Oh baby, how could I know there was no second chances? Like dominoes, my life got really scattered. Still, I find myself hoping that you'll find your way back to me. 'Cause I've been stone cold since you left me here. So come home, why won't you reappear? Things that I said came out totally wrong. Can't speak of the truth when it's taken.